Switzerland, and the rest of the world, Supersonic's money transfer has got you covered. With the largest payout network in the Gambia, you can now receive your monies anywhere you are, from Kartong to Koina, with less hassle. Yes! You can receive monies from your family and friends in UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world with our safe, secure, fast, and convenient service that offers you the largest selection of payout locations in the Gambia. Supersonic's money transfer. We are currently in 34 African countries and counting, giving you quality money remittance services that are second to none. Visit the Google Play Store or the Apple Store today to download the Supersonic's money transfer app and enjoy excellent money transfer services only with Supersonics.
Congratulations. I think on the soil of the Gambia today, this is the only event marking April 24. It's a shame that not our government, not a political party, not a civil society organization are taking time today to make a statement in honor of this day. Even if you don't agree it's Independence Day, but it's a huge milestone in our nationhood. So to say, as per the team, as Tony said, I just want to reflect on what Marcus Garvey said, that a people without the knowledge of their history are like a tree without roots. And a tree without roots, of course, is a dead people. So certainly we are not dead people. It's not that we don't know our history. But I think today, when I look at the malaise affecting the Gambia, I pointed to, first of all, knowledge about ourselves. And I think knowledge about ourselves, when you look at it, it cuts across. I mean, they say you have to know yourself first. Those of you who are reading history, they'll tell you in ancient Egypt, when you enter the universities, is that man know thyself. Know yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, you can't do for yourself. If you don't know yourself, you can't protect yourself. I mean, I know, Honorable Halifa, who was supposed to be here, and Doy has his strong message. If you don't know yourself, you don't know what you own. And if you don't know what you own, somebody can just pick it away from you. And so when you look at the Gambia's issue, political, economic, social, educational, and everything, at the end of the day, what I see when I look at the average Gambian is, do we know ourselves? And I think in one of our languages, they said, to tell somebody, know yourself is not salt. And I think we need to know ourselves. And knowing ourselves is really, this is called the Republic of the Gambia. I'm sure if you pose a question here to anyone, do you love the Gambia? Everybody would say, yes, I do. If you go to Saikunda Market, you go to Boraba, you ask anyone, do you love the Gambia? Are you patriotic? Everybody would say so. But then how come we are patriotic and we believe and hold that this country is independent since 1965, as we believe, until today, yet this country is so poor? Yet there's so much injustice in this country. There's so much deprivation. There's so much inequality in this country that in this country, for the past 50 or so years, we have only 3 people elected as presidents. One running for 30 years, the other for 20-something years, and the other one is getting into the second term. And we are a republic. And we are sovereign citizens who are supposed to know, to understand what is a republic. So that how could we have allowed a government to sit in this country to produce more of poverty, to produce more of oppression, of exploitation, and yet we claim to be independent. We claim to be a republic. What is a republic? What is independence? Do we know that? We said we are sovereign citizens. What is sovereignty? A sovereign citizen, what is that? So these are all aspects of knowing oneself, so that if I as a sovereign citizen right now, I don't see any Gambian that I'm subservient to, really. I have the greatest respect for these individuals sitting here, but trust me, if any one of them wants to harm the Gambia's interest, I'm coming after them as if they've never known me or I've never known them. It doesn't matter whether it's my father or my mother or my brother or sister or friend or colleague. No, I will, I have the greatest respect for D.A. Jawa here, who is a mentor, who is inspired us and strengthening us in the struggle in the Gambia. But we disagree. you know, because at the end of the day, it is the Gambia that matters. So sovereignty is a level that when a citizen arrives there, I mean, it's not possible that we should have maintained this kind of government, this kind of leadership, this kind of situation in this country for this long. So on a day like today, what I'll just ask every other Gambian, all of us actually, let's reflect. If you claim to be a sovereign citizen, go and interrogate this issue of a sovereign citizen. In the 97 Constitution, Section 1, Subsection 2, clearly states that the sovereignty of the Gambia resides in the people of the Gambia. That the government and all organs of the state derive their legitimacy and authority from the people and perform their functions on behalf of and for the welfare of the people. That's what it says. So for me, that is our anchor, the foundation of our sovereignty. So if that is the case, how therefore can we have what we have right now? Can we have what we had, in the past 22 years and even well before? So let us ask ourselves these fundamental questions. What is sovereignty? What is a republic? What is my purpose, my role? What are my rights and my duties as a sovereign citizen in a republic? And I think if we really get clear on that, we would have solved half of, if not all of the problems we have, because we would not have allowed abuse and deprivation and injustice and oppression and exploitation that we are subjected to by our own governments from 1965 to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. JOBARTEH. You can already see the passion in him, and trust me, you will see more of that to come soon. To invite Dr. ISMAILA CEESAY to also give us his thought.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today to discuss matters that concern the state. I believe the very definition of politics is that, deriving from the word police, that is the affairs of the city-state of Greece in Athens at that time, in particular. Politics is the affairs of the state. And no nation can progress if we can't have discussions like this. I like the theme, though, redefining the Gambia's independence. But I think it's time also for us to reimagine the Gambia's independence. There's a lot of debate as to when indeed did the Gambia become independent? When did we become an independent nation? Two schools of thought so far. The MADI school of thought, 24th April, is when we had independence in 1970, because it is the day when we became a republic. There are other schools of thought. There is no prominent scholar, or what would I use again? No prominent person who leads the debate. I think the majority of Gambians believe that we became independent on the 18th of February, 1965. What does these two mean? What are the differences? The MADI school is saying that we became a sovereign republic because it was the day when power was taken away from the Queen as head of state and given to the Gambian people. Because remember, in 1965, sovereign power still resided with the Queen, who was governing the Gambia through somebody called the Governor General, who was her rep in the Gambia. But I think there should be a third school of thought, and I call it the Dr. CEESAY school of thought. What is that school of thought? For me, independence is a process. It started in 18th February and got completed on the 24th of April 1970. But it's still to be completed, because are we still independent? Yes, formal independence started in 18th February. We became a republic in 1970, 24th April. But are we still independent? And I think MADI has mentioned a plethora of problems that the country is still facing. And I think for me, the fundamental question is not the when, but the what. Not the time, but the substance. Not when we got independence, but what did we do with independence? There are countries who are still dominions. Countries like New Zealand and Canada, they're still under the Queen. But they've done far better than us. We who are saying that we are a republic, we are independent, what did we do with republicanism? Did it translate to prosperity for the majority of Gambian people? Did it translate to food security? Are we able to feed ourselves? To energy security, are we able to provide our own energy needs? What did it translate to? So that is why I'm saying that the debate now should go beyond defining independence, that is when we got it, but reimagining what we did or what we are supposed to do with independence. It's time for us to look for solutions to our many problems. Today, I don't want to discuss the problems. Every sector has a problem in this country. Every sector, even every sub-sector has a problem. Today is a day when we should start the discussion to build this country for the next generation. That should be the debate. Then we'll achieve true independence. But for me, still, independence is still a dream. We are still yearning for independence because we are still not truly independent. And that is why I believe it's still a process which started in 65 on the 18th. On the 24th was a milestone in the entire process, but I think the process still continues. On a final note, I think this debate should now be shifted to looking at, like I said, what country do we build? What kind of Gambia do we want to see in 2050? Let's look at demographics, for example. Our population is increasing at a rate faster than many other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. It is projected that by 2050, we will be 5 million people. That is, in 30 years' time, our population will double to 5 million people. What kind of country do we want to build for 5 million people? Today, 60% of our population live in urban Gambia. Why? Because there is nothing in rural Gambia. No healthcare facilities, no proper education, no water, no electricity, no markets, no garages, no football fields, no jobs, nothing. But urban Gambia is not now 60% of the population. We cannot feed ourselves today. 90% what we eat outside. That is why we are feeling the pinch of global inflation. That is why we are saying, "Dundu bi share na balu koleat." Yes, because we buy inflation from outside when we buy stuff when they come in. Today, we cannot provide for ourselves our energy needs. Recently, the government signed a contract with Senelec. Car Power Turkey is on our River Gambia giving us electricity. We are relying on electricity from outside. We cannot provide jobs for our young people. We don't have enough roads for our cars. We don't have enough hospitals with good equipment and doctors so that when we are sick, we can get cured. We cannot even secure our homes. The debate should be, what kind of Gambia should we build? Let's look at the demographic trends. Like I said, we have a very young population. The median age is 17. It means half of Gambians are below 17 years old. What do they need? Jobs. What kind of jobs should we get in the next 20, 25 years? How do we create those jobs? How do we ensure internal security? What will be our main security challenges in 20, 25 years' time? How do we ensure we're energy secure, food secure? What kind of roads do we want to build in 20, 25 years' time? This should be the debate. I appreciate that we have to define the independence, whether it is the 24th or the 18th. For me, that debate is meaningless if we don't focus on the substance of independence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. ISMAILA CEESAY. A lot of questions asked there, and I have a lot of questions too to ask later. Before that, let us invite Mr. MADI, Mr. NYANG, to also give us his perspective, which I know, of course, will come from the economic perspective of the state. Welcome, Mr. NYANG.
Thank you, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the eminent panel that I'm sharing this place with. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the presence of Honorable D.A. Jawo, not only a mentor, but a reference and an icon for what this country should be about and the way we expect our elders and leaders to behave. And thirdly, to the probing minds that are sitting here, university students. It is a great honor to be here with you. And first, before I delve into the issue, I want to briefly talk about 24th April and 18th February 1965. Context is everything, and the context is global history. If you understand global history, you would have heard about the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was to bail out Europe after World War II. So countries that are to be bailed out cannot bail out others. And that's when the independence wave in Africa came. Europe could no longer take care of their African colonies, so they had to let go. But Europe was too smart. Europe wanted to give us political power and still maintain economic power. That's why 1965, independence came free of charge. I mean, I'll say that openly. Independence to Gambia came free of charge because Gambia became an economic liability to Britain. That's one thing we need to understand. 1970, Republican status. Liggéey jotna Gambia amna boppam. Mom sa boppa, mun sa boppa, gadu sa boppa, gom sa boppa, ame sa boppa. That is the meaning of independence. But unfortunately, the people who ushered in independence for the country were not well suited to lead an independent nation, not because that they were bad people or they were inept. They continued exactly where the colonials left off, and that's by creating an extractionary economic environment. We grow peanuts, cotton, whatever it is, ship it to Europe. And that's how we became dependent, and to date, we are dependent. So Gambia, as far as I see it, we are yet to be an independent state, because an independent state will not depend on donors to really finance your existence. Hence the reason conditionalities and everything abound on what we do. Self-determination is the basis and foundation of independence. And for me, we're yet to, get to that stage. And it is something that has eluded us for quite a while. So to the issue of redefining the Gambia's independence and nationhood, I'll just say a few words, then I'll sit down and listen to what others have to say. I am of the view that we've been talking about the new Gambia, new Gambia, new Gambia. And I am a proponent that will say you cannot have a new Gambia without developing and inculcating a new Gambia. Our set of values, our mindset, our worldview is not suited for the new Gambia. Likewise, independence. To date, all of us sitting here, I'm sorry to say, including MADI, we agitate, we yearn, but our understanding of independence is limited. Because if you're independent, it means self-reliant. If you're self-reliant, you want what's good for the greater good. If you want what's good for the greater good, you don't become a destruction or a destructive force towards the greater good's interest. And we have seen that the society we are living in today, called the Gambia, majority of public servants are destructive towards the greater good's interest, be it by way of corruption, by way of laziness, and not, carrying their weight towards the process of nation building. Therefore, we need to go back to the drawing board, and that drawing board is the schools, the communities, the households. Independence is not an ideal, it's a way of life, and it's a way we should live from cradle to grave. But something needs to be instilled in the Gambian, and what needs to be instilled in the Gambian is pride in nationhood. What needs to be instilled in the Gambian is duty and honor to country. These are things that have eluded us, and these are things we don't understand, and these are things we need to bring back through the curriculum, through the mosque, through the church, through community organizations, through our homes, and through our communities at large. Then and only then the notion of independence will have a chance to take root in this country. Otherwise, it's just an ideal that is elusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. NJIE. Independence is not an ideal, he said. It's a way of life. Inspiring. The last but not the least, and before I welcome him, I would like to apologize that Mr. Honorable Halifa Salah will not be able to join us today for some personal issues. We are honored to have among us Mr. NJIE, and anytime I log into the media, follow the debates and his contribution to current affairs in the Gambia, I have a glimpse of hope that all is not lost. And indeed, we are honored to have you here today, Mr. NJIE, to give your perspective. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. 3 years exactly after the Gambia was declared an independent country by the so-called Great Britain, there was a scholar who wrote a book. He's called Barclay Rice, Enter the Gambia, the Birth of an Intolerable Nation, questioning whether the Gambia could exist as an independent country, could exist as a viable nation, could survive a country at the time that had only a population of 300,000, with not many university graduates. In fact, our government was comprised of people mostly that never attended university. And these are the people who brought the idea of the Gambia being on its own. But today, we are raising more questions. We are not here as panelists to provide solutions. And that is why it's a panel discussion. But when I received the topic, the first question I asked myself was, should we redefine or should we define in the first place? Instead of redefining, we must establish whether we are able to define what independence means. It is because of the failure to define what independence means, and obviously, I will put that blame partly on our independence leaders. When the Gambia was said to have attained independence in 1965, what kind of citizen did we prepare at the time for them to understand the notion or the concept of independence? What does it mean for the Gambia? But we made them believe that independence is, now we have a prime minister, right? And then we came to 1970, that is why we still have this belief, some said. Like the professor said, two schools of thought have emerged. One, the MADI and Khalifa school of thought. But then we have the other school of thought, like you said, not led by any prominent individual to say, I believe that the Gambia's independence was 1965. But we have a lot of people that believe in that. But even up to 1970, we failed to make our people understand what independence means. And that is why we still believe that, yes, 1970 was real independence, or some are saying 1965 was independence, because they believe that 1965 was when we had a prime minister. They believe that 1970 was when we had a president. Therefore, the powers given to the Queen were now given to the president, no more the head of state. So we have failed to define independence, be it 1965, be it 1970. And that is why, when I received this topic, I said, I think it should have been defining instead of redefining, because we are yet to define, in my view. Now, but there are certain fundamental questions that we should be asking ourselves when we talk about redefining or even defining independence. How do we define or redefine independence in the age of globalization, where events in one part of the world affects lives and livelihoods in other parts of the world, like we are seeing the Ukrainian crisis? How do we define independence with rising level of poverty and inequality in our society? How do we define independence when we are faced with the threats posed by the phenomenon of globalization, crimes, corruption in government, rampant for that matter, and our own case, the Gambia is not an exception. Therefore, it is time for educationists, leading citizens and opinion makers, intellectuals and students to start thinking of defining independence at this age and time. That is the fundamental challenge that we all have as citizens. But then, for me, the notion of independence that many Gambians had, especially in 1965 and 1917, is about escaping from the clutches of colonialism. Now we are on our own, that we do not have a political power out there or a force out there external of us that is dictating to us, this is how you should run your affairs. That is what we believe, right? Because now we have a president. But that is not the whole thing. Therefore, for me, the first notion, the understanding of independence, as far as the Gambian is concerned, was when the British decided to sit down, what they call the Marlborough House in London, 1964 specifically, and said, now 18 February, we will give you independence. And we believe that that was independence. But for me, the other part of independence is now, how do we protect all individuals in the state? That is the notion of agrarian, independence as an agrarian concept. That is, we look at the individual, how do we protect all individuals in society, regardless of their sex, their religion, or other political affiliation, or their status in society? How do we protect these individuals in the realization of their social, economic, and political development? This is what independence means for me. Therefore, the notion of independence, the first period, was to escape. That is why I agree entirely with Dr. CEESAY when he said independence is a process. The notion, the first process, the starting point, was to free ourselves from colonial rule by having our own president, yes, but that is not the end. Now it is time for us to challenge our own leadership. It is internal now, not external. It is about challenging the government, challenging the leadership. What has happened to inequality since 1965 or 1970? Today you go out in the streets of the Gambia, in Serakunda, you see beggars all over. And we are claiming to have independence either 1965 or 1970. What has happened to corruption in this country? What has happened to myriad of social problems in this country, challenges in the healthcare, in education, social services, and other sectors, you name them. This is a challenge for us now. And it is important that we start answering this question. Because at the end of the day, we have a baton to hand over. It is to the next generation. And that generation will not forgive us, I repeat, if we fail to define the concept of independence for them to be able to steer their own affairs, to be the architect of their own destiny. I will stop here. And then I hope that we'll come back with another round of discussion. And that is where the concept of nationhood will be interrogated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. NJIE, for those thought-provoking questions. And before we get into the discussion, we will we allow the we have an ice break. We will have an ice break with students performing poem for us. So the poets from Newsrat.
I'm sorry, pardon our mistake. So the poem will be presented by Mr. Gay from Nusrat Senior Secondary School. Yes. So can we have Mr. Gay from Nusrat Senior Secondary School? While we wait for Mr. Gay from Nusrat Senior Secondary School, let's just have a quick interview. My apologies.
want to? Gosh, you all listen to me as I distinguish. Yes. Well, you all then have to work. I know that's a question. But today, I am here to correct and reflect all your... My dear, would you shut up? Who the hell do you even think you are? And how dare you? The Gambia leads that. Oh, there you go again. In fact, what's even our identity? Gambia is kind of close. Oh, wearing the flag red, white, blue, white, and green? Haha, indeed. Let's stop the argument and better start business. At least to promote unionism. Guys, this isn't funny. Let us not be insane. Again, we need to begin as a... Oh, you mean begin from our lost glories? From dependency to independency? From colonialism to self-governance? Yes, because this country's sovereignty and liberty is supposed to be our liability. I've been raped. My dignity is taken and stolen by his dead dreamer, claiming he's enjoying now, telling me. Is he getting or am I losing security? I was scared by, but it hurts. See how I bleed. He the rapist was pleased. But still I am blamed. Wait, nobody stopped him. He could still go on and on again from the toilet. So when I scream, he's open for they are secure. Yes, because they don't even know of their own safety. Till he killed before we arrest. Now tell me, I am still bleeding. Should we talk about our security? Security? Yes. I am hungry. My family is starving. Screaming and no one is helping. Am I dreaming? Tell me. Because I should be eating. The government is not aiding and that is hurting. Agriculture. Believe me, an empty bag cannot start. But even though my stomach is left nothing, when we have everything, we still neglecting our lands and engaging in important foods and goods. Well, they keep on costing more than our affordance. Tell me, why should I not be serving if I am really suffering? Okay, come on. See, my mother is unrelated, separated from me at home lately, taken and left at 60 to face the best, knowing that she's not making it. On that bad night, she's dying. Oh gosh! What a husband. Tell me what you see is one thing. The point of being wealthy when you are eating healthy. All the time our money is spent on eating when the money is eating. So tell me, shouldn't we talk about the health sector? Health sector? Yes. My school is on strike. See, when I was sent to be smart, strike and tried my objective to be great, and I will correct everyone with my brain to be right. But the blame, forget. The fact really is no good teaching system, and now my time is wasted. Education, they said, is the key to success, the passport to freedom, and enlightenment of experience. A right to all citizens, but a privilege for all. It's a right to all citizens, but a privilege to all. It's wasted, full of bribery and corruption, spying and dishonesty, wrong lectures and too much spending. And now, even though I'm a graduate, but I'm still desperate. Desperate? Yes. No. This is not the Gambia we deserve. Laila, Laila. Laila, Laila. Mama, Laila, Laila. Wobena kumala. Aze Laila, Laila. Laila, Laila. Mama, Laila, Laila. Wobena kumala. Oh yes, the Gambia we deserve is where our children will be happy. As agriculture is empowered, farmers are recognized, subsidized, are given. More extension workers are saved. Farming is mechanized, till food and drinks are plenty, and that kills malnutrition, hunger, and starvation. But before then, we yearn and still yearning for. But before then, we still yearning for ability, capability, and efficiency in our agricultural sectors. But before then, we yearn and still yearning for ability, capability, and efficiency in our agricultural sectors. Management in its technology, accountability of its legal framework with correct information and transparency in its development.
The Gambia we deserve is where our educational system will be monitored, where remediate schools and universities build teachers and lecturers trained to deliver, while students listen, learn, and graduate with excellent grades. So as will be surrounded by brilliant, smart, and academic individuals and leaders. But before then, we still yearn and yearning for effective participation, multi-actor partnership, transparent and accountable process institution, efficient and effective tools, then information and technology and education.
Oh, that is for you. Forget about it. The nationalists.
Dello Nuka Limo, New Bosco, Nampe, Gossi, Ben, and West, Monex, you next finishing, you want a patch on you. I'm sub-bot. Mom sub-bot, gum sub-bot. Betty won the Lord. Utubab new, not new, hospital new, sonal new, joy Lord. Real waxi kenn seng du ko yóbbu kanam waxoon naa ko fii daaw jéeg dama ko fi waxaat ren déwén dinaa ko waxaat bu ñu yàlla mayee fekkee ak yéeg ak man ñi ay ndaw la ñi war a dem kanam yow mi nga xam ne yow lañ dénk wàllu kaaraange dama bul caaxaan bu la kenn xooxatal tubaab bi ko wax security yow mi nga xam ne yow lañ dénk buntu jàng bi di jàngale di yëgle te li nga war a def mooy nga xamle manle doole nga la bul caaxaan tey bul xaaxaan fii si guddi bu ma tëddee bataaxal dafa ñëw bataaxal bi du ñëwee ndax ma leeral ma ni jàng bi ne dañ war a jàng we deserve very good education system. We deserve universities that will be centers of knowledge production. Sometimes I sit and ask myself, is it important? Is it even necessary? Is it even a necessity to have bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD when you cannot solve the problems of time? So my grandma will tell me, Amadou Maneko Mam Bete Makiwal, Jungle Lim what I just say real absolute one that can come. Kuma pensen buka banko samba nyanko al nga ñew télé ngo bula al nga ñew nengo bula al nga ñew tinya bula Facebook TikTok in buka banko samba nyanko ni nga mira na mira ko ka jamfale ni nga mira hatilo ka jamfale so do ma pensen hakil pensen buka banko samba Gambia nangen dina ngolen na ben lady ndi yeso nu lady wawata yaade yeso si affaire sama kala atel sama kala o ne jëborom xam-xam yi ñi am yéene yi ndax nit mun naa am xam-xam fekk amul yéene ñi nga xam ne ñu am xam-xam ci wàllu koom-koom ba bi ko économie ne leen jël jiital leen buñ leen jiitalee ngeen doylu biñ doyloo ngeen liggéey way kat daf ko daan faral di wax ale li booloo la ko caaxaane ko foowee dencaane la na nga wax li nga war a wax foo ko war a waxee na nga def li nga war a def foo ko war a defee bul sosle bul yàqale bul caaxaante bul foyee mbokk na nga déglul ma jox la bataaxal bi déglul ma faram fàcceel la ko mu set wet mbokk for the Gambia, our homeland. You and I, they and them, everybody, the university students, those that have graduated, those that are yet to come, everybody, the Pan-African Students Association, PANASA, Mr. MADI, JOBARTEH, every other person, we will work and pray like every other day so that we can live in unity, dignity, liberty, and prosperity. Let us give education rate. Let us work on our security sector. Let us let us turn the Facebook and the TikTok into a security that we need. Journalists, let us respect them. For E.F. Small was a great journalist. For when I read his newspaper, the Senegambia reporter, the Gambia Outlook, that was what he used to educate and to inform, not to destroy this nation, even when he was in exile in Senegal. His newspaper was selling, people were reading it so that they can be aware, so that transformation can be promoted. I told you this last year, Tony, continue what you are doing with your people. The only part, the surest means of bringing changes, effecting changes in this country is to work together. Si fatam fanso aman na faso to nga bondi nyimban koto nyato ta itemu nyato quality kana si fatam fanso na fejang itemu be place o nyinila kana si fatam fanso na fejang den ko gene ñu ragu ko ben set bo amul ota sabel na nga jël madar mu set wej bo amul madar na nga jël sabu soda ndax sabu soda fi lañ ko fekk réew mi suñu réew la ñun ñëpp nañ ko jël ñu bokk ko moom ko yéene jàmm tey ma doon ñëw dama fogoon ne dinaa fi doon fekk ay nit waaye ñi ma fi fekk ay liggéeykat lañ ñi ma fi fekk ay liggéeykat lañ ndax ñii gomuñ lenn lu dul réew mi mën a dem kanam ñun ñëpp ne nekk benn ñu liggéey suñu réew mën a dem si kanam. For the Gambia, our homeland, it's the combination of government and people that it is the combination of government and people. Let us work hard. Réew mi suñu réew la nañ ko liggéey nañ ko pàccoo buñ caaxaante buñ xaaxaan bu la kenn xokkatal xale yi liggéey leen réew mi suñu réew la bu leen kenn xokkatal jërë ngeen jëf thank you very much.
I want to sing the national anthem in Mandinka on behalf of the government and history club of the Nationhood.
Gambia kama na ulubanko na katanga doku oke aninduwa fobesi balu kambengo kono taram fambulo ning kairo lungobela alamati lingo yenna manyalu kanja kataja malu na alfalu kang Nangkali nalotanko bambandingola nalahi dolu ne kuta yandi kafundi nyoma alatalla mansaba Gambia sitara fofa utonya kono.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Newsrat Senior Secondary School. Government and History Club. And you can tell the passion of my teacher, Mr. Gay Shaw. Mr. Gay, I'm calling him Gay, so he is my teacher and will always remain my teacher. He's an inspiration. If you have such individuals who are overwhelmed, who are so passionate about country and people, mentoring you from a younger age, there is no way that you're going to get lost. So now we are going to move into the panel discussion. I'll be leading this one. That is before you're going to have your chance to ask a question and make your contribution. So that's the mic there for our panelists. You have raised a lot of questions while you give some thoughts on the topic on team redefining the Gambia's independence. I just want to start by asking this question. There is a blame already placed on our founding fathers by two of our panelists here when they said we have failed to define independence. Do all of you buy the idea that our founding fathers failed to define independence for us? Or there is a misconception that was placed on the idea of independence by our founding fathers? To start with Dr. ISMAILA.
Specifically, your question is whether we agree with
the proposition that our founding fathers failed to define independence for us.
Well, I mean, for me, I don't think that is what is crucial in defining independence. You can define independence yet not achieve it. Achieving is, for me, is the most important thing. If you tell me that they did not achieve full independence, we could say yes, but you cannot blame them for that. Like I said, my position has been, and it always will be, that it's a process. They do what they are supposed to do. The founding fathers, Jawara and his team, ensured that we got formal independence in '65. And he worked hard to ensure it wasn't enough for him. He could have made it like that, like Canada, like New Zealand, other countries. He worked hard and his people ensured we became a republic in 1970. So for me, I don't see that as an issue in terms of whether they define it or not. For me, it's what they achieve that is what we should be focusing on.
Mr. Jobarteh, do you think defining independence is an issue for you? Or this would be an issue?
Absolutely. And I love the way Essa put it. So that for me, this play, I mean, the last part, when the young girl sang the national anthem in Mandinka, for me, it provided a huge answer because I see the position NYANG and Dr. CEESAY took up. Valid point. At the end of the day, it give us, I mean, it's self-reliance. Munsa Bopa, Gumsa Bopa. All right. Yes, I agree. But, first of all, we have to have the political consciousness. If you are able to secure that society of equality, of employment, of good living for our people. So when these guys sang this national anthem, I just remembered my mom at home right now. I'm sure she must have heard national anthem. I'm not sure if I go to her right now and said, Mom, the national anthem, you know the Gambia's national anthem. She'll be asking like, what is national anthem? Because she didn't go to school. She didn't go to primary school to memorize this national anthem, like you and I do. So, and this person is supposed to be a sovereign citizen of this country. It's supposed to be the source of power. She's supposed to be one to hold accountable the government and the people we put there. So the fact that that person, and she forms the majority, who do not understand this national anthem, the meaning of this national anthem, the words of this national anthem in his or her own language, undermines the quality of our independence. But first of all, the realization that she is a sovereign citizen. And so if you don't have that realization in the first place, you are a sovereign citizen, I wonder what you can do for yourself. So I'm totally in tune with what ESSA said. We don't have to redefine, we have to define. And our leaders, they fail at the very beginning. I want to be kind towards our leaders at the time, PSJ, Jawara, and so on. Probably, what is our orientation? So it wasn't anything deliberate to refuse to do, but really this conversation should have been held, even if you take February 18 as Independence Day, should have been held on that day to let that Gambian know what it means for you to be a sovereign citizen, what it means that we are independent now, what is independence? But unfortunately, we never had that conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Nyang, you raised the question that we must define it. And if we were to define it, what in your own terms suits this independence?
Now that tells that independence, the notion of independence, is not only political. For us to secure or for us to have a government in place with a president, okay? But it goes beyond that. It looks into the economic life of the people. Like I said, independence as an agrarian concept focuses on the individual, okay? Because it is the individuals that made up a state. We know that the Montevideo Convention of 1933 will tell us that on the rights and duties of states, one of the criteria of statehood is what? Population. Therefore, the Gambia as an independent country, the Gambia cannot exist as an independent country without us looking at that in the context of the individual. That is the Gambia. Now, the reason why I said they have failed to do that, and I agree with MADI, I will be kind towards them, not necessarily to say it was deliberate on their part, probably because, as I said, because of the orientation at the time. But if you look at independent, okay, EF Small before Jawara, you know, we're all there as nationalist leaders. They did their part to ensure that we become an independent country. And somebody, like the guy mentioned, he was a trade unionist, an educationist, but also a journalist, impacting knowledge, teaching people, even though not in a formal school system. But then, what were the independence leaders at the time thinking of? When there was fanfare after they declared in Marlborough House, 18 February 1965, will be your independence, it was jubilation all over. And then we invited, where it was the Queen or the British to come and grace that occasion. Everybody, every Gambian at the time was like, Gambia mom na bopam lady, that we are an independent country. But the leaders at the time, like I said, it could be the orientation. What was the message out there to the people? Was the message that, look, this is just the beginning and not the end? Or was it that, oh, now we have an independent country, we have Dawda Jawara as prime minister, and that is it? But that is that economic aspect, that social aspect, where our people oriented towards that, to understand that in 10, 15, 25 years, 50 years time, we should be able to, as Nkrumah will say, Africa needs a new type of citizen, an honest and informed man and woman, okay? At that point, what was the message from the political leaders? Was it that they were educating or trying to make the Gambian understand that in 50 years' time, Gambians should not be talking about high rate of inequality. Gambians should not be talking about, you know, the security of this country being in the hands of foreign nationals. I'm sorry, you just have to give me 1 minute, okay? Because it's a problem. Today, when we say Gambia is an independent country, we still have the security of our presidency in the hands of foreign nationals, foreign forces. It is the biggest betrayal to the Gambia's independence. That is why it is a shame that today we mark 18 February or 24th April 1970 as independence. When you go to State House today, it is Senegalese forces that will receive you. That this is a country that is bordering us, close door neighbor, has intelligence, access to your State House. Not only that, but today, even internet, we rely on Senegal. Energy or electricity, we rely on Senegal. Just close door neighbor. It's not, we don't even need to go far. So what I'm trying to say is that at the time, what was the message from the political leaders? Just because, okay, Dawda Jawara is now the prime minister or the president, that was it. But did they prepare the mindset of the Gambian to build a new Gambian? Like you said, a new Gambia will require a new Gambian, a new type of citizen, who is honest, but a new Gambian who will understand that in generations to come, the Gambia, we have a target, a state that we must be. This is what I believe in.
Thank you, Mr. Jai. I think some points are coming across, and that is the need to have an informed mind, a conscious Gambian. Mr. NYANG, this question has been a point that you raised. How will you describe the action of the founding fathers in structuring the Gambian mind, or in their failure to structure the Gambian mind to realize what independence is or what it's supposed to be?
Thanks once again. I think that's a very important question. If you're to build a house, you need an architect. Once an architect draws a plan, you need structural engineers to put up designs that will make sure that this house is structurally feasible to withstand the test of time and the elements. Then thirdly, you need builders. I think our forefathers were not nation builders. They were agitators, agitators for independence. After gaining independence, basically, they left the country on autopilot. What do I mean by autopilot? They just left the country to go on its own. And we have seen that. We haven't seen any plan by Dawda Jawara from 1965 to maybe in the early 90s of Gambianization, having a Gambian ideal, having a Gambian concept, or having what an independent people should be about. It was all about living and living one day at a time. So we are ill-equipped. You go to school in the morning, not oath of allegiance. You do an allegiance, a plea of allegiance, or whatever you call it. Every morning in the classroom, you stand up and you give allegiance to country. And that is something that, over time, it is reinforced in a person. And we don't have that in the Gambia. Even our national anthem today, I can safely say that maybe it's only 6 out of 10 Gambians who have gone to school who can recite it start to finish. So what are our core ideals as Gambians? These core ideals, how have we transformed them to be not only for them to be concepts, but things that we believed in and lived by? If so, the rampant corruption we're having today will not be the case, because if you put country first, you will not be killing your citizens by depriving them of resources that would have otherwise give them a better education or a better healthcare delivery service.
Will you place ESSA and Ms. Jallo in the category of those that you describe as the places of the agitators? Because I seem to see him as a different view, looking at his activities, his line of activities, in making the Gambian conscious.
Emi Jallo of blessed memory and E.F. Small of blessed memory are great citizens. They did well for the country. But the difference between an E.F. Small and an Emi Jallo and the political class, they were advocates for the downtrodden, just like Marcus Garvey did. But Marcus Garvey, the difference between an E.F. Small, Emi Jallo, and a Marcus Garvey had a greater concept, and that concept was to create an identity based on Pan-Africanism. Emi Jallo, great. E.F. Small, once again, great. But the scope of their work was limited to the welfare and well-being of the working class and the people who rely on the working class.
When it comes to building the mindset of citizens of the population, education is evidently one of the most fundamental avenues through which we can build the mindset of the Gambian. How do we get us control of the education system to make sure that the ideas that we only have for
No, education in any society at every epoch serves two purposes. One is to solve your problems, your fundamental problems, and two is to build you a society that we envisage. In both fronts, our education sector has failed because our education sector is not solving our basic problems. They are talking about corruption. It's a problem in this country, but it's not solving it because there is no curriculum in our education sector, as far as I know, which teaches young people about ethics in the public service, about integrity in the public service, making a differentiation between what belongs to you as a private citizen and what belongs to the public. So how are we going to solve that problem? And one of the ways in which we can solve the problem of corruption is going back to the education sector, because the people who engage in corruption go through the education sector. It's a cultural thing. So what we need to do is to reform the entire education sector. One of the pitfalls of independence, not only in Gambia, but across sub-Saharan Africa, is that when we got flag independence, we still kept the cobweb of the education sector that the colonialists left. Remember that the colonialists had a project. And like I said, the education sector is supposed to, for every society, every epoch, solve your problem. Education sector was tailored to kind of support the colonial project. So when we got independence, the leaders at that time should have the foresight to sit and then redefine or define or reform the education sector and make it fit for purpose. Our education sector is still a cobweb. We are not taught to be creative. We are not taught to be ingenious. We are not taught to question and be critical. We are taught to memorize and to follow certain patterns. And that is why the education sector is not solving our problem. I mean, how many PhD holders do we have in this country? How many master's degree, bachelor's degree holders? How many engineers do we have in this country? Yet simple potholes on our roads are not being able to be solved by us, but from engineers from outside. We can build our own infrastructure. As far as I know, most of the big infrastructure that have been taking place in this country, University of the Gambia, the parliament, are built by Indians and people from other countries. So what we need to do is to go back to basics, go back and look at the education sector, understand our problems, understand the kind of society we want to build in the next 50 years, build the education sector to help us solve those problems, but also help us deliver that society.
Yeah, because I want to continue that conversation. That true education, but that brings us to the issue of defining that independence. You see, there's no doubt that Dr. CEESAY is a PhD holder in political science. And he speaks with knowledge when it comes to political science. He's made political analysis descriptions that have come to pass. All right. There's no doubt that you can have a better economist in this country than NYANG. You go to the medical field, the engineering field, we are there. Now, what is missing in the education system is not merely that we lack knowledge in terms of skills, technical information in that subject area, but it's knowledge about other things that would make that PhD holder in whatever field to realize his or her obligation to her society. All right? Because you can be educated to the highest level, but if you lack that education that builds values in you, of conscience, of honesty, of integrity that we talked about, you realize that you will be very prone to cheat your people, to lie to your people. And the biggest liars in the Gambia are the most educated people. So it's not that they don't know, they know. But how many of us are like Halifa Saleh? That you are educated, but you have conscience to know that I will serve the public interest. And that is what we need to produce in this university, so that these graduates, how many thousands have they produced so far, that they will not just be people who know how to fix the potholes, but they do it with a sense of responsibility and duty to their people, knowing I am from these people. The purpose of my education is to serve these people. You know, finally, I told this to my fellow university students in Sierra Leone some 25, 30 years ago. I told them the education we receive here, what I see, we will graduate, go back to Gambia, we will all get good jobs, all right? We will go get compounds in Brusubi, in all the posh areas, build beautiful homes, marry beautiful wives, send our children to private schools or even outside, but all around us will be poverty. It will be poverty. Now, 30 or so years ago today, we have all sent our children to outside the Gambia. We have all built beautiful homes, driving big fat cars, holding big positions in the government, in the private sector, in the international scene. But we cannot serve our people. All around us is poverty and oppression and injustice and deprivation. So what's the purpose of our education? And we know what we went to study. We can sit here and articulate the subject matter till doomsday. But at the end of the day, because deep in our hearts, in our minds, our people are not there. That love for country is not there, and that is the problem.
I agree with MADI. And I think when MADI spoke, it occurred to me that it's a personal reflection. When I left the country in the mid-90s to travel to Europe, to look for greener pastures, I did not go with the intention to study, because I had no scholarship. I was a young boy who finished high school with no job, with no prospects to get a job. I decided to go to Europe to hustle just like my contemporaries at that time. I'll fast forward to 20 years later. When I had my master's and my PhD, what he said occurred to me. What do you do with the education? And I said, if my education, my PhD can only provide me a story building and a few cars and a beautiful wife, and my kids can go to private schools, and I get my good job and sit in my corner, then my education is worthless. That is why I left everything I was doing to come and teach at this university. That is why I joined politics. I mean, people like me, people like NJIE, people like MADI, and others out there could sit in their small corners. Honorable D.A. Jao. We all know how hostile the political theater is in the Gambia. When you speak your mind, they don't attack the mind that you speak, they attack your person. But every day D.A. Jao writes, he's insulted. He writes, he's insulted. Madi writes, he's insulted. We could have all sit in our corners, get our jobs in a very comfortable place, drive nice cars, and travel world over. So I think there are still people in our society who are giving to society. I think we should appreciate those people.
I'm deeply touched by what Maddie said. And one philosopher of old said, religion is a contract between man and God, and conscience is a contract between man and himself. But the notion of conscience shifts over time based on societal values. Gambia as a society during independence was a society that wasn't material. The opinion leaders and shapers of Banjul, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, were not rich people, but modest people that the very rich in the society listened to. Because like the Wolof said, then I'm kadu. But the reason why they had kadu, because they had conviction. Our society shifted values quite a lot, late 70s, early 80s. That's when the wave of migration really, took hold in this country. Gambians left for greener pastures. And what I called then, most Gambians became street chemists. Street chemist is a nice word for drug dealing. When they come back home, their families embellish these people more than their educated sons and daughters. And guess what? That pressure is what brought the decadence in our society. And from 1980 to date, Gambia has transformed into a society where morals and values take a backseat for one thing and one thing only, recognition and also being able to have at all costs. If you look at our words in our society today, rabba rabba. Rabba rabba is based on nothing but quick fix. If you look at the word take it by force, it means no bounds in what you're going to do. Why? Because societal pressure. This is where Nigeria was in the 40s, 50s. A Nigerian will want to have or die, because when you don't have, you are nothing and nobody. And that's where we find ourselves today. And the only way we can take ourselves out of that is to have a re-education of the society. And this re-education must be premised on values, morals, ethics, and standards. And today, our society, if you have a president that will look at you, if you're politicking, you can say anything. Where is the moral equivalent in that person? If you have a president that will look at you and choose people who have enabled our treachery and smack it onto our face without any reprisal, it says that this society is morally decadent and bankrupt. Thank you.
I was just going to say, the issue of the will you not look at him like an ordinary man from within society whose mindset was not giving that consent or the values which all of us yearn to have?
My point of departure is in fact in that context. So they talked about education, the education sector, education system. When the British left, like Dr. CEESAY said, they left an education system here. But that education system was to advance a particular goal. And that was the colonial project, the goal of colonial project. They left, but that education system is something that they've even thrown away. That's the hard fact. Now, some of us that will want to travel to the UK to study, we know up to this day that they will subject you to a language called international, how do they call it, IELTS and TOEFL. That's what they will subject you because they want to test your intelligence, whether you're able to articulate yourself in their language, in expression and also written. But there you go to the UK and you sit with other people from other civilizations like Chinese who cannot even pronounce a simple English word. Okay? But yet, they will look at us and say they will not lower their standards. When they have been here for over 50 years, well, Yahya Jammeh will say 400 years. And then they left an education system with us. But that education system was to advance the colonial project. And when they left, they dropped it, and we're still proud of that education system. It continues up to this day. He talks about corruption in the school system, whether there is a subject that teaches students about ethics and morality. Just to inform this gathering also, that currently we have what we call civic education as a subject. I think it is introduced already. The other time we went to the WIAC to validate that and all that. And part of that civic education as a subject is also ethics and morality. But that is the bedrock, that is the foundation to address corruption. When we say, how do we fight corruption in this country, some will say, because normally when I pose this question in my class, my students will say, it is about putting in place the laws. There are good laws in this country, right? But have they benefited us? No. It is not only about laws, but it's also preparing the mindset. That is why I get back to the point. I said, in 1965, what have our forefathers done in defining, making the Gambian understand the concept of independence? Not merely ceremonial, that we have a prime minister who will come and deliver a speech, and we have cultural groups there, fanfare all over the Gambia has become independent. No, it moves beyond that. How do we prepare the mindset? And I agree with MADI that sadly, the educated people are the most dishonest people in this country. Today, or 2 days ago, there was a report released by the National Audit Office about rampant corruption in this country. Yeah, Jammeh's time, corruption was centralized in the Gambia. Jammeh taking, but now it is decentralized on the Barrow. That everybody, including Barrow, will take. We are talking about a country, $669 million were withdrawn without approval, and everybody goes to sleep peacefully. That nobody even cares. Those who question these things on social media are insulted. And everybody goes to sleep peace, and we think that we are an independent country. We still think that the Gambia is a sovereign country. When poverty is rampant, corruption is entrenched in society and seen as a norm. In fact, corrupt people are celebrated instead of being questioned, instead of being held to account by us, the citizens. He said something. You have a president who will appoint a speaker, and the speaker, I'm not turning this into a political discussion, but we have to speak the fact because it's about the Gambia. Okay, fine. We can't do so. Not necessarily partisan politics. Let me withdraw that, because politics is part of our life. It's an everyday thing. But you have a president who will appoint a speaker, and 1 week later, the speaker will come and say, in fact, I still hold the view that your election 5-6 years ago was rigged. And then it's still maintained there. We have a country where the security of our presidency is in the hands of foreign forces. When I, as ESSA and NJIE, a sovereign Gambian, MADI said we are all sovereign, but I question my sovereignty because I cannot access my state house without a foreign national coming to check whether I should go in or not. Not only that, electricity. We rely on Senegal. We talk about internet. Senelec, their connection was down 3, 4 hours, 5 hours in the Gambia. There was internet blackout. People could not communicate. We have a healthcare system that is just rotten and dilapidated. Our roads today, if you want to commit suicide, go and drive on our roads. Yes, the past days, how many accidents have occurred? It seems like more people die from accidents. And these are educated people that are in charge of all these sectors. We're talking about agriculture being backward in the Gambia since independence. Go to the agricultural sector today. It has the highest number of PhD and master's holders, but it's the most backward and most affected sector in this country. So that concept, that notion of independence, that is why I said it starts from our forefathers, but that is not an excuse. It's just like people who still question colonialism to say it's responsible for our underdevelopment, like what Walter Rodney will say in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. That is the dependency theory. But now we are shifting from that. It's no more about dependency theory. We are thinking of the interdependency. How do we also benefit from these people? Not merely them coming and taking from us without us also taking from them. So we must, first and foremost, from this day, start conceptualizing the notion of independence and how does it build a better future for the generations unborn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what we are seeing here is passion and factual information that touch on our life. And the bigger question is, what do we do with all these problems? We know they exist. And part of the missing point in our opinion, and I'm throwing it to you again, Dr. CEESAY, part of the missing point is on the issue of education and informing the Gambian mind. And it translates to our political culture. All the activities we have in our political culture is shaped by the minds of the people, the Gambian. If Gambian believe that politics is about drumming, it's about dancing, it's about giving t-shirt, it's about giving people money and so forth. If the Gambian believe that is their mind, it translates to their political culture.
Politics of energy. Politics of energy.
Oh, politics of energy. How does our political culture still how do you relate our political culture with the idea of independence?
Well, that's a very difficult one. First of all, before I just answer that question, I, to a large extent, agree with the previous speakers that we should not be where we are today, considering the level of people who we think are educated and are manning critical positions in this country. However, I'd like to draw a line and make there's a difference between being schooled and being educated. One of the biggest problems we have in this country is that we have a lot of people who are schooled but not educated. And the man or the woman who is schooled and thinks that he or she is educated is the most dangerous person for his country. Because if Mr. NYANG here undergoes civil aviation training to be able to be a pilot and does his 1 year, 18 months training course, he's gone through it, he's got his certificates, but he can still properly pilot a plane, and they give him a plane with passengers, he'll kill them in the Atlantic Ocean. So we need to make that difference. And for me, I feel sad when we think that the education is supposed to be the solution to the problems. But now it seems like in the Gambia here, we are saying that education is the problem itself, rather than being a solution. And I think it's important that we make that difference, that being schooled, you can have your PhD degree. That doesn't make you educated. You can be someone who's never been to school before, but you are more educated than the person who's had a PhD degree. So I think it's time to explore and interrogate those things and then move forward and find a solution to that. Now, when it comes to political culture, what can we do about that? And I'm happy that ESSA has just revealed that civic education is embedded or integrated in the education sector. We have first-hand experience in that, and I will share my experiences. You go to a particular village as a politician, you park your car, young people will approach you, 15, 20 young people. Now, I think if I was a young man living in a village or anywhere in the Gambia, and a politician comes and wants my vote, and then get that politician, what do you have for me as a young person? How do you change my life? What are your policies? But the moment they rush you is t-shirt all day. And one day I had this issue with some young people in a... Exactly. One day I had it with young people in NYANG, and we said, young people, speak for the young people. He didn't tell us, what are you going to do to ensure that our women in the gardens, life becomes good for them? What job? No, he said, and the man is married with kids. And I said, if we think like this, the country will not move. So, I mean, how do we change this? To be honest, we have to go back to basics. And I think for me, I don't have the answers to that. It's a perennial problem. It takes a generation to change that. And that is why I say we have to catch them young. Let us, you see, for us, to most of this generation, we are lost generation. We are gone. We cannot change certain people. It's not possible to change them. We have to go and catch those young ones who are not born yet. It is now time for us to sit and get a new development planning, a new vision for those young people. What kind of education system do you want them to go through? And get it ready for them so when they go through it. But for this generation here, us, our generation, forget about us. We are gone. Let us now go and capture those young ones and make sure they don't think like us.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. C, yeah, I think we have to critique that, interrogate it. So you form a party, you know, and kudos to Doi, really, that when they set up their party, they focus a lot on civic education, which they still do. And really, it's about empowerment. I think what is highlighted with that young man in that place, they need vest and football. How empowered is he? At the end of the day, politically, how empowered? I mean, it's not just his fault, but even you go to University of the Gambia, which is a 100% literate community, the empowerment is it there? I mean, how well are these university students securing their best welfare? You know, how well are they organized? All right, how well are they organized to ensure that they have quality education? It comes down to empowerment, enlightenment of empowerment and organization. So when people are not enlightened, they are not empowered. And if they are not empowered, they can be organized. And I think that's why I said kudos to Dai for establishing a party with a purpose. That look, at the end of the day, we come from a background in which our people are so disempowered because they are so politically ignorant. They are so disorganized, and we have to organize them. But if we say we abandon this generation, catch them young, those in nursery school right now, in primary school, you're talking about a 50-year period when those people will come of age, more or less. At least a generation, 20 years, 25 years. So I wonder whether you're able to change that. I think right now, and this generation, I suppose, is in charge of the upcoming one. Yeah. So if we are the last very and we most likely you will dismantle this country. So even the younger ones that we want them to take over, they'll find nothing here. So I think, like I said, your question is a difficult one in one sense, but also it's a simple one. That we have all recognized education, and we're talking about value-based education. How do we create a value-based education so that we produce policymakers, lawmakers, technocrats, intellectuals who are with value? Thabo Mbeki was invited to one of our revolutionary parties in Tanzania, Chama Mapinduzi Party, to talk to the Youth Congress. And he said his fear, he's very afraid for Africa. We have all the skills, all the knowledge, all the tools, but what he does not see is values. So that if we don't have values, we can have all the PhDs, we have all the computers, we have super high internet, we have vehicles, but we cannot do for ourselves. And right now, that is the problem we have. So I think we have to target this generation. Our political parties have to reposition themselves to really begin to see themselves as tools of national liberation, of tools of development, of empowerment, and see how do we really transform our electorates, and so on.
Yeah, what values the face of hunger? Like
Absolutely. Values has nothing to do with starvation. If you look at our forefathers in the 20s, 30s, when the Great Depression was happening around, they were extremely poor. But guess what? They were people of high moral standing, and they are people with honor to the point they'll rather die than succumb to the will of people. I think we have had a cultural shift. I think we're all talking about the political dynamics and national dynamics, but we are not looking at the cultural dynamics. And the cultural dynamics is what's holding everything. We need a cultural shift collectively as a people. And with that cultural shift, we can now have political shift and we can have a moral shift. But today, our society collectively, and this has nothing to do with tribes, collectively, we have shifted to a point that we are our own problem. And why are we our own problem? MADI said something earlier, man, know thyself. We no longer know who we are as a people. We don't know where we want to go. And thirdly, the youngest amongst us, meaning generation-wise, I'm scared for that generation because they have been exposed to a cruel world. This cruel world is a world that has brought information to their fingertips. But information is not good all the time because the type of information young Gambians are accessing today is information that's not helping them. What are they doing with it? Spinning cars. What are they doing with it? Bringing a pop culture idea that is very foreign to us and that is slowly degrading our cultural norms and values. So I think culture is the bedrock of creating a new Gambian. And without a new Gambian, everything and anything we want to do will be futile because it's not based on anything that will yield productivity for us.
Mr. NJIE, earlier reference David Rice, enter Gambia, and you note in this book, as you know, he referenced the New Gambia. You used to have this title before, New Gambia, before even 2016. It has now died out and it was surfaced in 2016. Now, the media, which you normally appear most of the time, do advocate. Why you do advocate for a lot of things, in our opinion, contributes to shifting the political culture. How do you understand the role of the media? We used, for example, have the New Gambia, which performs that role of enlightenment or informing citizens. How will you get the role of the media in shifting the political culture of the Gambia?
I think that's a very direct question. You see, political culture is the belief, the values, the attitude that people develop in a particular political system. And before political culture, there is what we call political socialization. That is the process of developing those values, those attitudes, those beliefs in a political system. Meaning political socialization is a process to attain political culture. And if you look at, in political behavior, what we call the agents of political socialization, we have, it starts from the homes. The family is an agent of political socialization. Political parties are agents of political socialization. Media, agents of political socialization. Because, and even the schools are agents of political socialization, because this is where people are giving information. And when we say information, we're referring to education. I agree that we need to differentiate between people being schooled and people being educated, but also we need to understand that there are people that are miseducated and they need to be re-educated. And that is the dilemma that we find ourselves in the Gambia right now. So the notion of political culture or the role of the media in developing or enhancing political culture is synonymous with the role of the media in enhancing or strengthening democracy. That is the context I will look at it in the modern era, contemporary Gambia. That we know when the Cold War ended, that is history. When the Cold War ended in the Berlin Wall collapsed in '89, the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991, there was a wave called the third wave democratization in Africa. And this was when one-party systems were challenged. Ghana under Nkrumah, Guinea under Sekou Touré, Tanzania under Julius Nyerere, Zambia under Kenneth David Kaunda, Malawi under Hastings Kamuzu Banda, the Ivory Coast under Felix Houphouët-Boigny. The list goes on. We're all one-party states. But then it was a moment when there was need for us to liberalize the political space. And how do we do that? By allowing multiple political parties to exist. And civil society were instrumental in that, including church and mosque. And that is why I always question what our churches and mosques are doing in the Gambia when it comes to even national issues. Yes, when imams are talking about politics, people will say, no, don't go into politics. When bishops talk about politics, they say, no, you should not go into politics. These are moral institutions. These are leaders, opinion makers, and people that can inform, that can guide groups of people, because politics is the business of everyone. So, but then not only civil society, but of course, media was instrumental in that process of democratization, ensuring that the African at the time, or African countries that needed to democratize, were informed that that's the people. And at that point, you will even give kudos to the Gambia to say the Gambia was on the path of multi-party, has been a multi-party democracy, one of the longest since independence. It was only in 1994, as Professor Abdullah said, we took a U-turn in our politics. And what was that U-turn? But instead of welcoming these countries that were democratizing, we took a U-turn by having military rule. So what is the role of the media in this? By informing the people. And we have to be careful also, what information will these media houses pass to the people that will shape their political orientation or culture?
Yeah, but I'm particularly concerned with the caliber of people running this media or media, and let's talk about the hosts, the panelists, and so forth. If you have people who are evidently uninformed or less informed than the audience, there's a possibility of having misinformation or them being used for purposes they are not meant to. So.
Quite interesting, and I think I will start that generally. If you talk about the caliber of people running these media houses, we also question the caliber of leadership that we have in this country, the caliber of people that are teaching in our education system or school systems, the caliber of people that are running our civil society, the caliber of people that are manning our economy, of course, the caliber of people that are running our media houses. This all plays a lot. Because at the end of the day, people that are listening want information that can benefit them, information that can help them be the architect of their own destiny. That is what they're interested in. But if you have individuals who have very shallow parochial mindset about development, about still the notion of independence, because the media should be able to, at this point, we are having this debate of the notion of independence. The media should contribute to that. And that starts with journalists. And I think it is good at this point, since we have in our midst D.A. Jawo, I think he may want to chip in that area because he's been a media professional and he was also one time the information minister. I think he'll be able to help us in that direction.
Definitely. At this moment, we want to.
I just want to say something. I'm not sure whether we are getting to that now, the notion of nationhood.
On the second part.
On the second part.
We come to that, and we
Okay.
only open the floor for.
All right, cool.
Including for Honorable Minister.
Yeah. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to speak to this issue of the media, I think, first of all, we got to recognize the global has for media. Somebody made reference to the drama, yes, more. And so the media has been integral in our independence, but also in building and ensuring accountable governance, good governance. I mean, Dixie Cody way back, and then you come all the way down to folks like the Hydra. Yeah, so data, for example, but DA, I mean, in that area, and many others. So the media has been integral in the middle of the efforts to ensure, to protect our independence, if I say so, because where the media have to ensure accountability and transparency, to make government, responsive. That is all in the effort to ensure to protect our independence. I think when we come down to this present moment, for me, I think our media has subsided, but at the same time doing great. It's a mixed thing because we have media institutions that are really making great efforts to bring about accountability. So whether it's Malagan newspaper or even the the TV radio stations, Kedfatu, and so on, but also we must recognize how the media got decimated as a result of the dictatorship, such that one needs to look at the media landscape, the participants in that media, the media workers, in terms of demographics. That capacity is a major issue in our media, but also I think patronage, corporate interests have gone into our media. And that is concerning because that can hugely undermine democracy, good governance, the empowerment of the people. And so I don't know what Dia would say, but then when I look at the media, I have mixed feelings. In one sense, I see great effort being done by a number of media houses and individual journalists. But at the same time, I see a lot of corporate interest going inside the media. I see a lot of patronage, and even the media serving as a mouthpiece to promote this toxic polarization that is in our society, which all needs to be a matter of concern to us.
Thank you everyone. Kindly call about I'll have a night back to the MC, and when we come back to the second part of the discussion, we will entertain your question and of course hear from the former Minister of Information.
Thank you, Fumi. That was an interactive panel and educative. So we move on to the next item on the agenda. We invite in John Pickering for a poem. Thank you. Poem Bella is a poem. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ajifatu Kuyate, and I'm a student from John Pickering Comprehensive Junior and Senior Secondary School. I have a poem to recite, and it is entitled The Gambia. This is how it goes. For the Gambia na banko, nañ boole nekk benn liggéeyu suñu réew mi. For the Gambia mbasuo, nañ taka suñ digga bi yóbbu réew mi si kanam ci kaw a kaw. We are the land that still bears the mark of oppression. We are the people who lived and made it through depression, striving and working and praying not to an era of expression. But this country, all that's within our possession. We own our votes, we go to polls, we choose who for the post. We are the people and the power and the pride and the price of greatness. We each have contributed to making the Gambia Remi Taranga. We are a land of peace, a people of progress and a home of prosperity. For the Gambia is a promised land, a land that has no space usually for nepotism, tribalism, favorism. We are a nation because of every Gambian soul, the teachers and preachers, farmers and carpenters and painters, ministers and registers, nurses and mercenaries, the Tengena man, the ferry collector, the boutique post, Nyanjais, Alcalo and Kanyamais. We are a smiling coast, not just we smile, but there is smile no matter what. We are the red, white, blue and green colors, the scorpion in the game, the homeland of the Linger and Jem, Kunta Kinte, Karaba Jawara, Solo Sanlin, Daida Haidara. We are a people of value and virtues, a country that will never again surrender to slavery. Alas, gone were the days when we were silenced by the guns and threatened with the locks. We are done crawling under the chains. We are done looking from behind the bars. Look at us. I mean, really, have you traveled our river and land and seen our diversity? Have you experienced our Christmas or celebrated our Tobaski or attended our Gamu? What about our Gentes and Takas? Manyo Bitoni Bamuto. We are unity in manifestation, humanity in action, and love in deed. We are of homes the Afakayats with friends and foes, neighbors and strangers. We are of Kiyankas and Badibunkas, Joras and Seros, Jatis and Dramas, Kuyatas and Ketas, Sanawiani Nyoyaya. We are the people who serve our only chicken to our guests and spend our last dollars on attire for them. We know how to love. We know how to welcome and embrace. We are of beautiful people, modeled from the nights of Laban and Lupin. Dance and sing together as Muslim and Christian kids. Miniyamba tunga balambelo. Saba miniyamba kini kini ye dalilelo. Saba miniyamba tunga balambelo. Saba miniyamba iduke falule. Ominabo miniyamba ni waratunkana. Saba miniyamba sabaya konolelo. Saba miniyamba. As one people, taught to respect, expect to excel, nurture to survive structures of struggles. See, we are families of dignity and honor. Jam Akungor, Natapalapa, Domada, Churai Gerte, Akran Habisa. The little we have keep us smiling. Let our river divide us, but not our hearts. For the Gambia is one Bantaba for Gambians. So, this is my song for liberty. I pledge to put this country first. This is my song for liberty. I promise to serve this community first. This is my song for liberty, for the Gambia ever true. Nabanko Gambia, Fafau. Ah, Nabanko Yuruandi, Gambia, Nabanko Yuruanye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And moving on to the next item in the agenda, it's an essay to be read by John Pickering, SSS, titled A Letter to Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. A Letter to Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. A round of applause, people. Honorable guest speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. My name is Adama W. Ba, a student from John Pickering Comprehensive Senior Secondary School. I am here to deliver a message, a letter rather, in memory of Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, and it goes. Dear Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, today, 24th April 2022, 52 years of republicanism for Mother Gambia. I write to you with a sense of gratitude for the efforts, sacrifices, and nationalist strides you have made towards building a country that has risen from the ashes of slavery and slave trade, escaped brutal consequences of European exploitation and subjugation through the mischievous hands of inhuman, barbaric, and sinful colonialists. I recognize the patriotic armor you had worn in your efforts to build a country that was stricken by poverty and ignorance, mental drain, and oppression into a full-fledged independent and sovereign state. In the 1962 elections, after you had been duly elected as the Prime Minister of the Gambia, a position you were only able to handle after had fought constitutional amendment battles. You had installed a democracy recognized by all. You fought tooth and nail with a patriotic cap for the freedom of this country. On April 24th, 1970, After several efforts and calls you had made, this country, the Gambia, became a republic with its government. We gained our self-government led by our own people with a great sense of selflessness. You had been a symbol of tolerance, a peace-loving soul who had brought normalcy between Senegal and Guinea-Conakry. Not only were you a nationalist, but also a visionary leader who had always loved, cherished, and admired the Gambia and Gambians, fought for our rights, and helped us stand from nothing to something. You had been a peaceful legend. It saddens my heart, shatters my hopes, and malnourished my growth, for I am shameful. I am shameful that I could not be a soldier to your legacy. Today, as you rest in peace, the country bleeds. Not the country bleeds. Hundreds of people have been murdered in cold blood by selfish leaders who had always stood to suppress the masses for their selfish gains. Our patriots are gone. Daida Haidara, Usman Koro CEESAY, Solo Sandeng, and many more pillars of your kind have fallen prey to the brutal hands of dictators. The land described as the smiling coast of Africa is now the whipping coast. After 20 years of nationhood since your regime, corruption, embezzlement, tribal politics, indecency, selflessness, and cluelessness have beclouded, blurred, and erased our hopes for a better country. Our hardworking women have fallen to the traps of maternal mortality, and our roads have developed into a cemetery where the youthful generation languishes in the heartless hands of death. Accidents have become the order of the day. You have left a country where the water supply turns to a mining zone. Electricity becomes a sight for the heaven, and unemployment becomes a national pride. Agriculture, what we call the backbone of our country, is now an occupation for the hopeless, frustrated, and disregarded citizens sacrificed by our politicians. Wake up, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. Save us from this state of frustration. Our monthly earning can no longer feed us for a week. Our education system does not provide us any solutions. Our National Assembly members are glued to their political parties. Our leaders no longer care. They no longer care for the creation of a better Gambia. Our freedom is stolen and given to the Western world with a democracy that continues to strike us into poverty, ignorance, underdevelopment, and premature deaths. Dear Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, we strive, work, and pray that one day we will live to witness a better Gambia built with a firm allegiance to nationalism. We remain hopeful and committed to building this country that you had fought for so hard. We the youthful generation, thank you for your sacrifices and pray that one day you will live to see us sailing this country to our dreamland. Till we meet again, in peace, rest in peace, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara.
Incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for that incredible piece. She said, wake up, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, and I pray that his spirit and the spirit of our forefathers are awoken in each and every one of us to strive and do better for the country. Now, before we move on to the panel discussion part B, let us indulge an essay to be read by Nusrat Senior Secondary School titled A Letter to Queen Elizabeth. A Letter to Queen Elizabeth. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and good afternoon. The honorable panelists and the esteemed audience. I have a letter to read written for the Queen of England. But before I go forward, I just want to get this off my chest. I have been really and truly educated today because I am a student, and then what is contained in my history books, that Great Britain gave us the independence because of their humanitarian spirit. But that thing has been laid bare today by one of the panelists. He said at some point, Britain had to let go. So thank you very much, Mr. NJIE, for the education. I'm deeply grateful. Here goes the letter. Dear Queen, I am a child of one of the countries that once made up the British Empire. I am a child of the Gambia, from the Gambia. 2 months ago, my dear country clocked 57 since the claimed attainment of independence. I use claimed because opinions differ among my people as to whether we've been truly independent. But first things first, that's Salcom letter. History teaches us that our dear country got this claimed independence in February 18, 1965. History teaches us also that you headed this empire that the Gambia was a part of. And it's not lost on me that most of the roles you played were signatory. A case in point, it is understood that during the granting of independence, you were represented by the Duke of Kent, who presided over the ceremony. However, it should be noted that some reasons were given as to why the Gambia could not be allowed to take charge of her own affairs. Key and most important was the time was just not right for the Gambia. This is evidenced by the work of Berkeley Rice, The Birth of an Improbable Nation. Naturally, one would only expect such explanation from one who truly cares. Sadly, as revealed by history, the Gambia lost more than it gained from its membership of the empire. To atone for this injustice, I hereby advise that a sincere apology be offered to the Gambia for being robbed of its meager resources under the guise of civilization. And most importantly, the apology should be followed by the compensation of all that was wrongfully taken. Now, to the core of the matter. Has Gambia truly been independent? Well, if the happenings in the country are anything to go by, then I am submitting to us that the answer is not in the affirmative. To prove this point, let's focus on a few things. One of these things, and the most important, is education. Being a high school student, I need not be told that most of what we are forced to know has little or no relevance to our lives. If education is meant to transform, then why should anyone's time be wasted on learning something that only helps to convince one of why he is inferior and why he must accept that position without complaining? Whose interest is really being served here? Certainly not the school-going child. As the saying goes, to every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. And this situation is no different. It is common knowledge that in our part of the world, it's about getting certificated that matters and not getting educated. As a result, discipline as a word has disappeared from our collective vocabulary. You surely won't need rocket science to substantiate this claim. You only need to take a quick visit to our state institutions. What does that have got to do with independence, you might ask? Well, one can only sow what one is taught. Then it is about time we took full charge of growing our syllabuses and not allow any form of dictation from anywhere. That's what independence is about. Only this way can we make sure what's relevant to our development as a people is taught and not the other way around. Another parameter that needs to be looked at to ascertain whether we've truly been independent is our foreign policy. It's common knowledge that for a relationship or for relationships to stand the test of time, they have to be mutual. Sadly, when one examines our relationship with other foreign nations, this feature of mutuality is nowhere to be seen. All that is clear is we are getting milked and we know very little about the extracted milk. To give weight to this claim, one needs only examine our relationship with China. The coastal areas of the country give a glaring evidence of this situation. These places have been robbed of the very essence of life, clean water and air. As a result of these Chinese operations in our waters, the air has become polluted and water lifeless. However, it is worth noting that the ones who bear the brunt of this invasion of our meager resources are those who never had a say when these deals were being signed. Added to that, even those who signed the deal knew it wasn't a good one, but being truthful wouldn't have been diplomatic. They knew the truth doesn't sit well with the one who is bent on exploiting others, so they cold-shouldered the truth. Going forward, if we're really serious about progress, we must collectively acknowledge the fact that independence is not merely having a seat at the decision-making table, but also being truthful, even if that means cutting the very hands that feed you. God bless the Gambia.
A powerful letter indeed. One of our panelists made mention, or rather expressed their concern or fear of the young people of the Gambia, and I know you all agree with me that this, what we have just witnessed, is a glimpse of hope that we have a bright future. And now we're going to be moving on to the panel discussion part B, and I'll have to hand it over to the moderator, Tony Edmendi.
Thank you. This time around, I think I will be moving around. We will be giving the mic to you. Earlier, we talked about the role of the media, and I want us to also look at the economic situation. Gerard did say there is a nation that cannot feed itself is not independent. You cannot claim to be independent when you cannot feed yourself. Before allowing you to touch on that, Mr. NYANG first, I would like to give the mic to you.
Washington, West African. Numa mati kunyila kaba jimsimit sone putop be fatia kungole kunga pikire to coronavirus ba chamut haniwa.
Very interesting. However, I say thank you to Tony and his group also for organizing this important event. But MADI alluded to that. I was really disappointed that, they put up a panel, they didn't see, any Gambian woman who can sit on that panel. I think that was a disappointment. We all have been castigating our political parties for not kind of giving a voice to the women. So at least we expected university students to think different. So I was disappointed when they put up a panel without a single lady among them. So I think that's a lesson to be learned. Next time round, they will address that. Certain terminologies also, before I come to the media, I'm not very comfortable with. Well, I really like supporting, gender issues. When we say gender is a neutral term. It's for both men and women. So, maybe you can call me a gender activist. Although in the Gambia, when we say gender activist, we are thinking about women who actually fight for the rights of women. But I think the men also can fight for the rights of women. In this country, there are certain terminologies, probably we have to look at them in our language. We've been hearing people here talking about our forefathers. What about our foremothers? Definitely, they contributed to whatever we are here. Yes. Probably, I don't have an answer to that, because probably the educationists will help us as to when we say forefathers, what do we say again? Do we say foremothers? Another thing is that in this country, we hear people calling Rohilo mayores. I think that's a wrong terminology. Again, it's a wrong term people are using. I mean, there are thousands of women mayors all over the world, but it's only in the Gambia that the mayor is called mayoress. I mean, even in Freetown, their mayor is a lady, but they call her mayor. Mayor is a neutral term. It's not a woman or man or whatever. So mayoress is definitely wrong. That's all English. We have it in the dictionary. But if you look at it, I mean, the mayoress used to either be the wife of the mayor or a lady who was assist the mayor in the office. But in the Gambia, we refer to the full mayor as mayoress. In fact, I told her once, don't accept to be called mayoress. You are not a mayoress. You are a mayor like all other mayors. I think we'll have to look at our language. Sometimes it's not very gender friendly anyway. When it comes to the media, of course, Gambian journalists have done a lot, have done well under the circumstances that they've been operating in. For a very long time, we've never had journalism training schools in this country. So, I mean, people who are called journalists would just come from the classroom into the newsroom, and we call them journalists. In other countries, they actually have standards for journalists. Unfortunately, in this country, we have not had that yet. In Senegal, for instance, I mean, before you are called a journalist, you must reach a certain standard. You must either a certain educational standard or a certain, professional achievement before you are called a journalist. We have journalists, we have animateurs in Senegal. Not everyone who appears on television or or radio is called a journalist. We have what they call animateurs, who are definitely not journalists. People who can just maybe sit on a panel discussion or whatever, not necessarily that they are journalists, but they can just moderate. Well, in the Gambia, as I said, we never had that professional training. And, so standards are still quite low. And we also seen that during the time of the Jami era, it was not quite fashionable to be a journalist, particularly, so virtually everybody, all the radio stations and others were concentrating on music and commercials because making hard news was very dangerous then. And we had more DJs actually than journalists in this country then. And then suddenly in 2016, 2017, we had these changes. Then the airwaves were free. Everybody was free to to say whatever they wanted. Then those DJs actually suddenly were transformed into journalists. So you can see that most of those who are actually in the newsroom were not journalists per se. They didn't know what journalism meant. They had no idea about the ethics of journalism. So all that actually retarded our journalism development. Again, most of the media owners in this country were many business people who were more interested in what they can make out of their media houses than actually keeping the ethics, journalism ethics. They were not journalists at all. They had no idea what journalism meant. All they were interested in was to make money. And that's the situation, up to this very time, even though, we have some journalism training schools now, and they are doing well. The situation is improving, but we are still, confronted with that kind of a situation that we had some time ago. So, but as I said, the Gambian journalists are doing very well under the circumstances that they find themselves in. And maybe it's just a matter of time before we also reach a certain level, as far as our media is concerned. But as I said, I'm really impressed with the panelists, and they have done great, actually. We all have learned quite a lot from, what has been going on and what has been said here. And again, just to touch on the independence bit, MADI and I have always been on the opposing side as far as when we achieved our independence. As far as I'm concerned, it was 18th of February, 1965. Of course, just as Dr. said, it's a process. We actually achieved it on the 18th of February, but the process maybe was completed on the 24th of April. But definitely, on the 18th of February, we had a cabinet which was composed, apart from one white face, that was the Attorney General then, Fritz Bridges. Everybody else was a Gambian in that cabinet. So we cannot say that we had our national anthem, we had our flag. So it was independence, maybe Now you can define what independence means, but definitely we had our independence on 18th, and I am on that school of thought. So I thank you very much for this very, very interesting forum, and I'm sure we'll be continuing this kind of forums. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. An applause to the former Honorable Minister. And is anyone intrigued by the process? Should we celebrate where it ended, or should we celebrate about to end? Because in 1965, still, the Queen was still the head of state and still holds power. For example, he can dissolve even the National Assembly. So where should we celebrate? At the end, when it was finally done, or should we celebrate when it's about to end? I will leave that almost done.
What was done finally?
What was done finally was that the power was transferred absolutely to the Gambians and taken away from the Queen. NJIE, on the question of the economy, I repeat, Nyerere said no country can claim to be independent without being able to feed its people. How will you correlate independence and being economically viable state?
Thanks once again, and everything has to be put in context. 1965 snapshot Gambia, 310,000 people, predominantly agrarian society, and a society that, produce agricultural goods, mostly cotton, groundnut for exports, then again, mostly to United Kingdom, and what was left was for subsistence, meaning farmers to feed themselves. Early 80s, or late 70s rather, because everything has to be in context once again. We had the energy crisis, the Arab-Israeli war, the Six-Day War that led to the 70s, then the energy crisis of the world, and in the early 80s, we saw the famine that hit and ravaged Ethiopia and others. And that should have been an alarm for the Gambia to focus on feeding itself. But no, what has happened between 1980 to date is we have outsourced the feeding of our population to outsiders, and outsiders predominantly in Southeast Asia and Senegal. And that in itself is a strategic national security issue. I'll bring it closer to home. The World Bank were having their spring meeting a few days ago, and there were some glaring statistics that came out of there looking at Gambia's trading partners. If you look at Gambia and Senegal, net inflow of trade to the Gambia from Senegal relative to net outflow of trade from the Gambia to Senegal has shifted significantly. In the 80s, Gambia was the breadbasket of Senegal. Be it food, textile, medicine, you name it, entertainment. This was the Mecca they look up to. We have lost that. And what has made matters worse is, quote unquote, the Senegambia Bridge. Mind you, I'm a Pan-Africanist, but I like us to understand that the notion of forced among equals is the premise of any relationship, forced amongst equals. And right now, if you look at the Senegambia Bridge, it was co-financed with a grant from the ADB by Gambia and Senegal. But there are some terms there. The terms is now that bridge is open access to Senegal, even though they will pay. But in the past, Gambia can close its borders, and that became a negotiating tool for Gambia vis-a-vis Senegal. That is no longer the case. Senegal now has unfettered access south to north, north to south of a divided country.
That is the opinion of my SD. I know you not accept it, not disagree. But I'll come to that later. First, what question to ask? The panelists, you raise your hand. I'll be direct this because we'll be closer soon. Want to say something? Okay, you can use the mic here. So this mic is for you. Want to ask a question? Just raise your hand. We'll for you. I'll be direct the question.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the notion of, like, when we say independence, some political independence, economic independence, and looking at the situation in the Gambia right now, I mean, I think a lot of us will say, yes, we have attained political independence, but economic independence, even if you talk to my grandma in the village, you'll tell me that that one is not yet attained. Because as a country up to this day, we rely on external donors and so-called development partners. Well, I don't call them partners, I call them development exploiters instead of partners. For budget support, every now and then. And also, on top of that, you know, there is this book called The Looting Machine, written by Cambodians, where he looks at how big financial conglomerates, you know, tend to direct the way governance work in certain countries. When they come in, build their big businesses, and then directly they control, indirectly they control the leadership, the political leadership of that country. And that is how they're able to loot the resources of that country. Looking at our system currently, you know, it's not only budget support, but even our reform programs that we are celebrating or boasting ourselves of since 2017, it's all funded by external donors. I mean, that is why when the draft constitution was debated in Parliament, there will be big British embassy, I think the German embassy, and the US embassy, wrote a joint letter to say parliamentarians should give thanks to the draft constitution. And all of a sudden, we had freedom fighters everywhere who said the Gambia is a sovereign, independent country, they should not interfere in our affairs. But I said, look, they always say you put your mouth where your money is. It should be a shame that we said we are an independent country, they should not interfere. When in reality, they are providing the money for that. That draft constitution being sponsored by these external donors. The security sector reform, external reform program, external donors. You talk about the TRRC, all these reform programs are being sponsored by them. Even salary increment that we are thinking of. If we should increase salaries, how do we sustain it? At the end of the day, we are thinking of the World Bank and other external donors to help us. So we must begin to interrogate that concept of economic independence because it is a fallacy up to this day.
Thank you, Mr. Jai. Now we have a question.
And then we were told by the Minister of Finance that they received between 10 to 15% of the products. Now they're coming up with a new national development plan. What type of plan will you take to help build up the number of the country, we move towards
Thank you. I think it's a very brilliant question. And what I have learned in school is that it's good to plan. And when you build a plan, it has to be executed. And in the process of execution, it needs what you call M&E, monitoring and evaluation. So the plan cycle has just elapsed. And one would have thought the government would have spent money measuring and evaluating the efficacy of the NDP plan. Then the outcome or the results coming out of that M&E exercise will educate what type of a plan or subsequent plan will we have going forward. But a few weeks ago, I was surprised to see a group of eminent Gambians laying out a new plan. How can you have a new plan without measuring and knowing the pitfalls of the NDP and see how best to close those gaps? So is it just an exercise that we're doing just like the Vision 2020 before the NDP, or God knows? But I want to know myself. I'm as confused as you are in terms of the way government is doing it. But best practice and best global practice dictates that, yes, have a plan, roll out a plan, execute the plan, but do a monitoring and evaluation exercise to see where you have done well and where you have faltered, fix it, then that will be the basis or foundation of a new plan.
Mr. Jai, let me ask Mr. Duarte. Having a plan for 5 years for a state, is that really something realistic? Having a national development plan that with lifespan is only for 5 years, is that realistic?
Oh yes, it's not strange for countries to have piecemeal plans. Sometimes we need a bigger plan. You mentioned Vision 2020, which was conceived in 2000, 99, 2000. But in it, it has piecemeal plans. I'm sure you will call PAGE, PRSP, and so on. Because yeah, development has to be planned, and planning has to be based on research, on data, and which is why it's completely right to say at this point, if they should come up with a new plan, there should have been some research, some evaluation to look at what NDP 2018-2021 achieved or not achieved to inform the new plan. But in terms of having a plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, even a 15-year plan, even bigger, AU has a 50-year plan, the 2063 agenda. So, because those plans give you the ability to manage change, to manage progress, given all the factors, economic, social, technological, political, and so on. So it's good for a country, an institution, university, an organization to have plans, periodic plans which are reviewed as we go on. So that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brilliant presentation here. I love the lectures you have given here. It's really a lot for me. I was eager to make a comment, but since we are running out of time, I would like to ask a question to all of you who have get an answer. Since we all identified the problems that this country is facing, ranging from political to economic and education. Now, I want to ask all of you, what would be your advice to the people present here and the university in general? What should be our responsibility when we leave this door? Because I believe the university has a role to play. University should be the focal point or the point of no turning back when it comes to political consciousness, which includes economic independence, self-reliance, and independence in everything, as far as we are concerned, both culture or representativity. I'm asking all of you, what is your advice to us who are here and the university in general? What should be our responsibility from today?
Maybe we'll go this way. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I think the first thing that I would advise is to ensure you take charge of your own destiny and not be oblivious to your society. And try to know yourself, know your community, know your country, and know the world. The experience I've had sometimes with young people, especially in university setting, is very depressing. I teach introduction to politics. And I've seen university students who are 4th-year political science students, and I ask them, which constituency do you live in? They don't know. One of them told me that, I'm from West Coast, but my constituency is Latrikunda. Who is your National Assembly member? I don't know. The man or the woman we pay, you pay to go represent you, to be your voice, you don't even know that person. Who is the Minister of Youth and Sports? We don't know. The man and woman we pay for your development, you don't know. Who is the Minister of Higher Education? Well, we don't know. The man and woman we pay responsible for education, you don't know. Education is not about cramming books and passing exams and getting certificates. It's about knowing who you are, knowing where you come from, knowing your society, your community. I think my advice is, I think you need to start being active citizens and stop being passive citizens and stop being just criticizing and see what can you do for your country. But you cannot do anything for your country if you don't know your country or if you don't know the problems of your country.
Thank you. So, Doctor said the right things there, reflecting on my own personal life. So, as you know, me, I'm from Boraba, the village of lights. As people from poor backgrounds, we would normally be given to some Ghanaian. So I found myself in Banjul and in Bakau, and so here I am today. So as a very young boy, I just started to question, really, to question everything. So my advice to you young people is have critical mind. It is not that whatever MADI says is true, whatever DA says is true, even whatever the Imam says or the Bishop says is true, all right? So have critical mind. So I was asking myself questions. You know, if I talk to my parents, the elders, they talk about this great culture we have, this great society we are from, you know, this great Manding empire. But then some people came from us and ravished it, enslaved our people, colonized us. So I'm like, if we are so great, why that is the case? What is the problem? If Gambia, we are said to be some great people and we are so poor, what is the problem? So questioning, I began to question the fundamental beliefs, pillars of my own society, my own culture. And that is the process of knowing myself and so on. And as that journey was going on, I remember going to, you know, library or any book I can gather, even an encyclopedia, just to read to know. You know, so even at that time, I knew the political, you know, dynamics in the country. As he said, who was the minister, who was that I need to know, trying to know myself. But as the journey went on, I came to across movements like DOI. As a little boy, would sat down listening to Halifa and Syria in their rallies. Ebony in Sarakunda, I don't know whether it's still called Ebony. All right, you know Ebony. Whoever knows, who knows Ebony here? No, not DA, of course. You know the place they call Ebony at Sarakunda? No. Well, you know. So, and then they talked about the things they're talking about, and the idea of even April 24th, our independence. I get interested. I went to research. What are these people saying? And as I read on and on, I came across somebody called Franz Fanon, and he's talking about every generation has a responsibility to discover your mission, to fulfill or to betray. So I asked myself, my generation, what is my responsibility? What is my mission? Am I going to fulfill that mission or betray that mission? You know? And so it continued and continued until we are here today. So I think, in short, that is it. Don't be zombies, don't be buckets to be filled in with water, you know, by Dr. ISMAILA CEESAY or NJIE here or, you know, somebody else. No, have a critical mind and begin to question. Have the courage to challenge, you know, your elders. I mean, the ideas they bring, the ideas we hold, whether they are, you know, political, economic, religious, social, cultural, question them. You are human beings. You know, we are not donkeys.
Thank you, Mr. Ayobade. Now we have Mr. Bush.
Oh, but the question didn't, the rest of them, okay.
My name is Babakan Bush. Sitting here, I can observe that we have three generations. We have the colonial generation, I'm from the NJIE generation, and we have the generation Good Farm. So we all have the same problem. And the problem is Gambia. We worship as Muslims, we worship as Arabs, not as Africans. Christians worship as Europeans, not as Gambians. Economically, our people who are economists think like Europeans, analyze like Europeans, and behave like Europeans. Civil society sometimes fail their responsibilities and play political parts. Education will teach our kids as Europeans, so that they can think like Europeans, act like Europeans. My question is, who are we? That's the question. Every person asks us, who are we?
And the mission to discover themselves.
Very interesting, but I think the answer is out there for all to see. I'll give you two names or three names: Basil Davidson, Ali Mosry, and John Henry Clark. You want to know who we are? We are a people with triple heritage, unfortunately. And this is what colonialism and religion has done to us. The African is an African first and foremost. The African has been trained to be Western in terms of education, and to a point, we have been indoctrinated into, you know, Islam, Abrahamic religions, So who are we? We are a confused bunch. We are a bunch in search of an identity still. Look at our names: John, William, Mohammed, Usainu. You will hardly see an African with an authentic African name. And that is the beginning of the miseducation. Well, I have NYANG, I have a unique African name, but notwithstanding, we are still in search of an identity. And it's a crisis that has befallen the African.
Well, the question is too philosophical. I'm not sure. But like I said, the people really think, if you read that book, you will get to know that we are the people. As the author will say, lost identity, we've taken from Europeans, we've taken from Arabs, and we've taken from Africa as well. But I think it's a very valid question, though thought-provoking, but it's something that we need to ask ourselves to find an answer. But then the advice, the first question regarding the advice we have, I think they've said it all. But then just to add on, is to say that we need to be that active citizen. We need to first and foremost do a self-reflection. I always say is, even in the university, when we are on our WhatsApp platform, talking about problems in UTG and staff, and problems in the Gambia, I always say you need to do a self-reflection. Let's reflect. Let's do a self-assessment of our own. What is our goal? Are we doing our responsibility as expected? Are we going to class to teach? Are we going to work on time? Are we fulfilling the contract hours that we have with the students? Because it's very easy in this country for people to sit in their comfort zones and point fingers. The president is not doing that. The minister is not doing that. The director or the commanding secretary is not doing that. But what are you doing yourself? And you go to those people, you find out that they are the problems. They are worse than the president or the minister or the commanding secretary. So we are honest with ourselves, and we find it very difficult to tell each other the truth. You will sit with me here, blaming President Dow, blaming the minister. You know that I'm not doing my job. I'm not coming to class. But you're not facing the teachers in the ESSA, you're doing your job. But when I go, you'll be like, okay, just don't mind me. But so it starts from there, and it's also about being active rather than being passive. And the activeness is about asking critical questions. I mean, interrogating issues. Like I said, these days we're talking about rampant corruption in this country. There's one Kenyan professor who said that corrupt public officials are models. Models in the sense that the money that should go to the healthcare to save the life of that pregnant woman or that sick old man is being siphoned by few individuals as a result of the man died because there are no medications or equipment for the hospital. The money that should go into infrastructure, people are proper roads so that our roads are safe enough for people to drive, will be taken away by few individuals. There are accidents on our roads and people die, and they say, or whatever. It's because few public officials have taken that money instead of building proper roads to invest $10 in this, invest on the $3. As a result, people die because of those. So, meaning corrupt public officials are equal models, and we need to hold them to account. But then, finally, to say that being active, we'll be asking questions. If you go on social media today, our WhatsApp pages, what are they putting out there for people to learn, for people to see? Many times you go check WhatsApp pages of young people in this country. It's all picture every day, million pictures. People will upload 1 million pictures on WhatsApp pages every day. It's about issues that do not concern the government. You want to say those are personal things, but then you don't ask critical questions. The station coming from the university, sometimes when I engage with some students in the class, I feel like, we are dealing with the wrong people. And we need to debate these people for them to be active citizens instead of passive.
Thank you, Mr. Jai.
My name is Nationhood. I'm a major in political science. So my question is specifically to Dr. CEESAY and Mr. NYANG. But we're talking about giving back to your community, like Dr. CEESAY said. We had this information to come back to give back to the student. So as an individual, I realized that sitting down and listening to people lecturing is inspirational, yes. But actually, when you personally go to the classroom, maybe you have some inspiration to go into something or to do something. But you don't have people to engage, and it's very difficult to have connections with the people that can actually help you. So my question is exactly what if any activities are you engaged in to actually engage the youth of, especially people who are studying political science? What are you doing to engage them in order to be able to, you know, reach maybe at least a level of where you
to mentor you?
Yeah.
Yes, you want to go first?
No.
Well, thank you. I think it's now we should celebrate, and I agree with Honorable Jao that the panel is not a balanced panel. For the first time, a woman is participating in this event. The previous women who spoke are part of the organizers, so we should celebrate that now a woman is finally gotten up to participate by asking a question. I think her question has to do with mentorship. What we can do to ensure that we mentor younger people and inspire them to become good citizens and to become good not only for their country but also for their community. What we are doing right now as we speak, nothing. I'm not aware of anything, especially at the level of the university. I think that's a student center, career development, something like that. But I think it's something that as a student at UTG, you can start something. You can start a kind of a focus group where you can engage people like us, people like Mr. NJIE, NJIE is here, MADI JOBARTEH. And then we can have weekly or monthly events where we can meet with some students and then we can engage. But that engagement now is not existing anymore. It used to exist before. I remember when I was teaching back at the university years back, we used to have events every Wednesday. I used to organize what they call the SAR seminar series, where we'll meet, we'll bring someone like an eminent person like Mr. NJIE to give a speech and inspire us, and you get the chance to interact with him and ask questions. But that has stopped. But I think it's good you can start that one now, and we can start a focus group where we can meet once a week or once a month, and then we can see how we can have a mentorship program. But also, I think I remember ESSA, there was one time we also registered Young Citizens for Development. I initiated that 1 year back at UTG as well, because my idea was that the whole idea of corporate social responsibility, that businesses have a responsibility towards their society by contributing. And also that academics, students have a responsibility to their communities. If your education that you gain from UTG is not changing lives in the village you come from or the town or your constituency, then something is wrong with education. So I established what they call Young Citizens for Development. We registered it. We met once a week. We organized events like these forums. Part of this was to inspire young people, mentor them, but also make sure that their education they're getting from UTG is filtering back to their communities and helping them. You can help revive that. We can talk later after this event, and we can see how we can work together to revive such forums.
Thank you, Dr. CEESAY. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Momo Dupa. We are very happy to be here, and of course, we give thanks to the organizers and also the panelists over there, and each and every one of you who find that common with the question. But what I want to understand, what I would like you to make you understand here, what are we reading from here? What do we read? Because we are talking about independence. What show is about independence? Okay, it is Gambia's independence is unique of its time. Because we are told politically we were independent in 1965. But again, getting our sovereignty was in 1970. Which one do we have across Africa during the time of independence? Which country was given at us? And what do we do from there? What is the way forward to educate the upcoming generation that actually Gambia independence is 65 and not 70? Sovereign and independent, we need that distinction. Otherwise, we will be laboring on this topic over and over, and you know, time is moving.
I think it's right to ask the professors here. Canadian independence is the absence of sovereignty.
Well, I mean, the whole idea of being independent is by being sovereign, is to decide for yourself. So, I mean, if you are not sovereign, then the question of being independent becomes problematic.
And we were independent, we were sovereign in 1970.
No, don't. Yeah, okay, man.
Well, okay. I know this probably we will never solve this until I become a member of National Assembly, where I will place a bill for government independence bill to change the date. Because we are too much in love with it. 18th February. We've been socialized, as I talk about political socialization, it's in our DNA. So it's difficult to, people cannot imagine now the abandoned February 18th. But really, personally, when I speak about this, I'm speaking about it in terms of the facts and the law. All right? If you look at the law in 1965, say the 1965 Constitution, it establishes us as a dominion within the British Empire, which means we have a very high level of self-rule. The process, as I talked about, for me, I think as an argument sake, or I think, that's what I talked about. You see, we can even go to 1947, with A.F. Small, when he was made elected representative in the Banjul Legislative Council. We can refer to 1962, when Jawara won the election, 1963, when, P.S. Njai became chief minister or something. There are stages, and as Nyang said, the war in Europe created a situation where we had to be let go, but the British were managing it in a way that at the same time they will continue to have control. So the process, we can go as far back when it started, but the point is, and that is not just Uganda alone. If Americans claim that they have independence in 1776, July 4th, it doesn't mean everything just broke up that day. No. There were a lot of things that happened before July 4th, 1776, but July 4th, 1776 is the day. So in our case, a lot of things happened many days we can refer to, but the day we gained that independence is April 24, 1970. Jawara said it. I don't think you can put everything aside and just go to Jawara, because he was the man at the top. And he said in his autobiography, Kairaba, did you read it? When he entered that office as prime minister, thinking now I'm the man, only to realize for every little thing he has to be consulted to consult the governor general, he has to consult London. And he's like, what the hell? So actually power is only way in London. So this is the point. So I know we love February 18. I was a kid at Mohammedan Primary School, and independence used to be nice in our days. Sandals, white socks, and all of that ceremony, marching at Makati Square in front of Jawara with the white scarf waving us. Beautiful. But look, this is our history, our experience. We'll have to take the bitter pill to realize, okay, we are moving. So rest assured, if I become National Assembly member, if I become president, I'll push a bill in the National Assembly to change the date, even if it is year 2050. You'll change it, don't worry. Good luck. DA, I'm sorry.
There is a disconnection between the young people and the government. It's like the government and the government. The young people simply don't understand the institutions how they operate. We don't only need to the constitution, but we also need institutions that work or that guys, or those that are in public institutions. But again, this kind of culture, we don't only need to lecture students what the government should do. But I feel like academics also play an important role. That is the form of policy. Yes, people don't really, but partly that is something like guidance and so on. For example, I used to have a fellow in President Wilson. It's easier for me to research on legal issues of Nigeria or the US in Gambia than anyone else, or not legal issues in Gambia. So including the academia, the University of Gambia need to also change its approach. Don't only for the students to go and learn about their extension. Write and publish and make it so they understand. That's one. Two, coming for MADI, who is of course one society. You see that, for example, medical civil society is following tracking and so on members. how they come into parliament, whether they are party debates and so on. That's informing because the electorate. But what we say in the Gambia here is, we have seen young people, so many interested in contesting. Yes, some of them don't even understand the basic function of parliament. Some don't even follow parliamentary procedures, for example. But don't you really see society that also follows this speech? Can sort of like serve as the one job simply, and informing the citizens, adequately informing them, and also making citizens understand the power of recall of national assembly members. Then you will realize that young people will be adequately informed and also involved in life.
First, Dr.
Let Mr. Jabari go first.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Well, that is basically what civil service should do, to serve as a watchdog, holding government accountable, not just government, but all sectors of society, whether private sector, individuals, just to make sure human rights are protected, that in terms of business, that people are getting value for money for the goods and services they buy, that public services, when they're delivered, they're efficient, affordable, accessible, and so on. So that's the role of civil society. But part of that also includes, therefore, raising awareness, because, when people are not aware about their rights, about the obligations of the duty bearers, it will be difficult to hold the duty bearer to account. So people need to know what are your rights, what are your duties, and the duty bearers. They could be the state, it could be the private sector, it could be anyone in a position of responsibility, delivering a service, and so on, to know what are their obligations, what's their terms of reference. Because if you don't know my terms of reference, you cannot hold me to account. So I think that is being done. Not satisfactory, really. If you come to the area of civic education, for example, there's not more that could be done. So I completely agree with you. In some countries like Ghana, even Senegal, Nigeria, civil society is not more vibrant, not more forceful, and they just don't raise awareness, but also they perform stronger watchdog measures, like they go to court. All right. In the Gambia, it's just recently we saw civil society taking government to court, apart from GPU, which has been doing this under this leadership a long time, but also to protest, which is a legal, democratic, non-violent, peaceful action that civil society mobilized citizens to go and manifest in the public space in order to put pressure on politicians and so on, to change decisions and so on. So all of these are done in the Gambia, but at a very limited scale, and it all comes down to really, even within the civil society, how much do they understand the role of the civil society?
Yeah.
And which is very limited. And I think that's where we are.
I think his question touches on the role of academia, in particular the university. Well, academia play multiple and sometimes overlapping roles. One of the key roles we do, apart from enlightening, teaching, is we embark on academic research. But research is expensive, and those who pay for it they know what they want. There's a lot of research published in Gambia on Gambian politics. It's out there, it's everywhere. But one of the pitfalls of this generation is our fixation with social media. We don't read anymore. The amount of time we spend on social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, WhatsApp status, every year, on average, per young person, it's a lot. If we spend that time on reading and doing research and self-learning, we'll make progress. But also one thing that is absent, and someone mentioned, you are planning, and MADI talked about how now we have to shift to what they call evidence-based policy making. The government is not engaging the university. Today we have a problem, and Esanja mentioned it, accidents everywhere. The number of people dying on road traffic accidents is a lot. What are we doing to solve it? Nothing. Any other government would have engaged the university and commissioned research to find out what's happening. There's empirical evidence to suggest that accidents have not only increased, but have become deadlier. Today, there should be a team now doing research to find out why is it that today a lot of people are dying to road traffic accidents. By now, we should have had a report and recommendations saying that, well, government, one of the reasons is because of one, drink driving has increased in number. 2, fatigue. 3, the roads are not good. Cars are not roadworthy. And so on and so forth. And these are the recommendations. Oh, overspeeding. Then government will come with policy. Speed cameras everywhere. Equipping the police and training them to detect and also reprimand those who drink drive. Putting measures in place so that drivers that do long journeys can have logbooks where they can have to record and tell the police when was the last time they rested. Expanding the roads. These are policies we do. And then coming back to what he said, evaluation. After 5 years, we evaluate. These policies, did they lead to a reduction of accidents or has they increased or stagnant? This is how government works. But university, basically, what we do at UTG is to teach, teach, and teach. There's a deficit here in terms of knowledge production. We consume more knowledge at our level here at UTG than we produce, and that is a problem.
Thank you very much. My question will be back to ESSA. You mentioned the issue of 669 billion being taken by the government now. Now, we all go back, we all go back now. So I believe it all boils down to the individual gravity. Like the spirit of nationalism is not there. We don't claim ownership of this money. What actors do you think are responsible for that?
For people taking ownership?
Yeah, people don't take ownership.
One, I think there has to do with scale, awareness, level of consciousness. Where people are conscious of the fact that government is just a group of people that are put in place to be responsible in the management of the resources of the country to provide address to the challenges of people. And this is what we call good governance. So it has to be people be conscious of the fact that it's not a hard country. It doesn't belong to anyone else. You have an example of people looking at the president, going to the president from begging the president to provide the government for them. I mean, development is a right, even international human rights issues. Telling that development is a right, in international government, so if the president fails to go to a particular community and then they start placing of activity, as if it is it's not fair, it's a money. The president before becoming president was going to be marketed by stock. But after becoming president, he seems to know the price of commodities in the market. He was clear about it. It's just like if I give you my money today and say money is every morning you give me breakfast, afternoon lunch, night dinner. And then on top of that, I'm paying. When you give me my breakfast, I can't do that. Because it's my money. So we take the president as one will say, Chief Sam, we give him and trust him with our resources and say, you and your cabal, I guess not your cabal to play with us, but you and your cabal, you make this money from this resource. So if you give us that, it's not like you're giving, in fact, it's our money. So people must be conscious of this stuff, that it is their own money. So people don't know that this is 669 million, and the rest of the other millions and billions that are in this country and in this news belong to them. And at some point they feel like it's normal, even if you talk nothing will come out of it. But these people how do you be? If people don't come out, question these things, challenge these, then they don't know what to say.
Can I add something there?
Yeah, we don't just from observation. How is that related to transition from our previous governance structure, pre-colonial governance structure, to what we currently have? So we used to have monsters, we used to have bulls, we used to have guys whom we are used to praising and so forth. Coming to that transition that we are seeing right now in the political country.
I'm not a historian, so I'm not sure you can answer that podcast. What I know is that for me, it's a psychophancy when people think that leaders should be praised, people start to see as servants instead of seeing as people that provide a spirit and that give us spirit instead of. So we have rights, but it's all about self-consciousness. It's about people being aware of themselves, like you said. People must know themselves. People must know how this is complete. We talk about being in a classroom, answering students 7 basic questions about their country, and they don't have an idea how to do it. The 669 million, I'm sure when you mention it, some people are surprised. I can tell you that. Some are mentioned us. They don't even know that these things are happening. So people must be aware that they don't see, you don't have to see this thing that nobody when I put up statements. Sometimes I will see message, even 2 days ago when I reached 669 million. Somebody messaged me, say, political talent. I couldn't have I was so mad, I didn't even have to respond to her because I know that that is her level of understanding. So if you put up statements about politics in this country, check. If you don't always put up statements, nobody will understand you, maybe 1 or 2 people. But go and put up a very foolish thing on social media. Either your picture or a funny thing, something that is humorous, you will see tons of messages coming. Because that's what people enjoy. But you cannot have a developed society without people developing critical minds, so people question certain things. So it's really sad that this is the type of community that we have, and it's indeed rampant among people. Yes.
I think this 669 has raised something that most asking. There is indifference and apathy across the board. But the 669 has raised a bigger question that needs an answer, and that's called civil service reform. In every department or ministry, you have what you call an accounting office, including the state house. And the accounting officer is not a politician, but a technocrat, a civil servant. So, how did we flout the rules, and why were the rules flouted? Well, the rules were flouted because the civil servant lacks security of tenure. The civil servant is not protected, and basically he is in office at the whims and caprices of the political master. So civil service reform is a big problem why the country's finances are how they are and where they are right now. So since Barack is in his new term, it is incumbent on all of us to have a 5-point agenda of institutional reforms that we want. And key among these institutional reforms is civil service reform.
Thank you. Mr. JOBARTEH, the issue of praising the ESSA so forth. Continue our previous governance structure, the demands that we have, the rules and so forth. But if there's a transfer of political.
Yeah, so I think Nyanga talked about the triple heritage. And before that, as I talked about our leaders at the very beginning, did not prepare us. And so where we are right now, we are suffering from that crisis. All right. Because a lot of people are looking at the president, are looking at governance from the point of our socio-cultural traditions. You know, of course, a lot of others are looking at things from a very religious, you know, perspective. And a lot of others are looking at it from, you know, a modern Republican point of view. And so we have in this society all these traditions and these people. And then we have a leadership that is, whether consciously or not, or both, feeding on these key traditions that are flowing in our society so that they promote this master mentality and so on. As I mentioned, the issue of chief servant. 2016-17, when I began to refer to Adama Barrow as chief servant, I got personal and public messages insulting me that I'm very disrespectful. How can I call the president chief servant? Some people cannot just understand that. But I still maintain that the president is the chief Midan. Okay? Now, and it goes to what Esa just said and all what we've been saying, consciousness. Consciousness about sovereignty. What is sovereignty? I think Mr. Boyd asked the question, what are we? And it just clicked on my mind what Karl Marx said. Philosophers have described the world, now it is to change it. All right, and I think that is where we are. And I refer to, you know, when the United States was created in 1776, it took some 20 years before they even had a constitution. All right, and they had a huge conference in Philadelphia to create a constitution. At that time, imagine the US, a very big land area, 13 colonies, which started in the United States. So people came from across these 13 colonies because they had there is a constitutional conference at Philadelphia to create a new country. So the delegates came. One delegate was coming out. I think he's one of the founding fathers and mothers. As he said, in a changing language. Benjamin Franklin or someone, and an old lady outside the conference hall. Like they are sitting in this conference, and somebody is outside. They are waiting what the delegates are going to come with, what kind of constitution. And the lady, old woman, asked this man, "What kind of country are you giving us?" And he responded, "A republic if you can keep it." Huh? A republic if you can keep it. You know, underline that. If you can keep it. So what that means is the republic is the property of the citizens. So here you hear people say, today is Republican Day. No, we became Republic. But do you know what is a republic? Really, do you know what is a republic? Because really, if you know what is a republic, we would not have been here. You would not be like this today. No, we would not. If you really know what is a republic. So this issue is a matter of political awareness. Until we get that level of political awareness, I tell you, these 669 million, who cares? The country is quiet. Who would imagine the kind of speaker we have today? You know, deputy speaker, who would imagine, you know, the kind of corruption that is going on everywhere in this country? I mean, and the whole country sits down. Who would imagine 2020, they will kill our draft constitution, and the whole country is like we are having a picnic. If those people are really sovereign Republicans, if we were really sovereign Republicans, I have said in our civil service forum, I said, let us mobilize 100,000 Gambians and invade the National Assembly. That's what Republicans would do. But we sit here, people will give our power. The Constitution says the government derives its legitimacy and authority from the people. We sit here, those trustees, those minans, flout us, disrespect us, insult us, and we sit here and somebody's telling him political tala. They should have been down in the National Assembly and are tearing them into pieces. That's what Republicans do. So we are not Republicans, we are not sovereign in this country. We are, I don't know what kind of people we are. We are nothing. So Mr. Bush, what are we? We are just no different from the donkeys and the sheep in the Gambia. We are the same.
That's possible. We can have a question.
My question is, this democracy before the West, that's a land of the West, is it valid, you know, adopting our system, or whether can we go back to the monarchy system? Because the democracy that the president sits full time, come with these devils, take everything, somebody also come. How long will we escape?
Let me ask Sanja to remind me. I'm growing old now. I think one philosopher, former president, said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for those that have been tried from time to time. Who was that again? Winston Churchill. Yes. So this whole thing about democracy imported from the West is a misconception. It wasn't imported from the West. In fact, the thinking is that democracy, ancient Greece, is the cradle of modern democracy. It started in ancient Greece, in particular in Athens. That is why democracy, demoskratos, that is, the people rule themselves. It was a direct form of democracy. But also, I think there are also stories which tells us that if you read historiography, that in fact, the African governance system we had initially was based on democracy, but based on consensus and not competitive democracy. These are two things. That before, when there's an issue to decide on, our great-grandmothers and, no, I would say grandfathers, because in most cases, women were excluded. In fact, democracy also is time-bound and context. In Athens, at that time, they called it democracy, but women were not taking part in the process. Foreigners were not taking part in the process. They were excluded. In South Africa, when did black people start to take part in the democratic process? In 1994. In America, it was in the 60s. Yes, before that, they called it democracy. In the UK, it was in 1924 that women started to take part in democracy. Yes, they called it democracy. So the whole idea of democracy is that we had our democratic systems and governance systems in Africa based on consensus. Now, if you say this whole competitive democracy, or political parties compete for power, is an important concept, I agree. But is that really the problem? It has worked in other countries. They are governing themselves fine. They are developing. Is that the problem? Or is it how we are practicing it and applying that is the problem? We need to make a difference to that.
Yeah, so we have to govern ourselves. Every people, even every individual, you and me, I govern myself, you govern yourself. I have decided today I'll put on this. That's a governance issue, because it's a decision-making issue. That I have taken the decision, and that's politics, is the ability to take decisions. Now, we've been governing ourselves all over the world. Every society governs itself. Now, the question comes, what kind of governance system do you put in place? Now, we know we had monarchies, even in Europe. One family, one man, and now one woman is the king or the queen, or the emperor, running the whole society. On what basis? And we have seen, the good and bad of that. All right. Now, when we talk about democracy, I don't see it as a Western thing. Yes, the word democracy, we can break it down and say it is Greek. But for me, we need a governance system, a political system in which decision-making has to be in the hands of the people. And that decision-making, in terms of, say, elections, are going to produce leaders, trustees to take control of institutions, which have to operate based on laws that we collectively agree to put in place to abide by, so that society is not run on the whims and caprices, on the imagination of one MADI over there. Certainly, I will oppose anything to create a Jawa kingdom in this country. I will oppose anything to create a CEESAY kingdom or a NJIE kingdom in this country, or a JOBARTEH kingdom. No way. So I would say we have to have a society, we have evolved, that today, in this hall, as we are right now, if we should govern ourselves, it should be a collective decision-making process.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. We have 10 minutes probably to end. So be brief observations.
Good afternoon. My name is Al-Basham, third-year political student at the University of Gambia. We have seen the development of political parties for the role of independence. And then we have seen that collectiveness towards the objective. We have also seen another development for proliferation of political parties after the Gambia reform. Rolling down to coalition 2016, when political parties come together to make the change that we desire, soon after the Assembly, we have seen that divide are short, they need disintegrated, and the bigger political parties failing away. So, do we say that because now from 1970 to now, we have not seen that collectiveness among the political parties towards our development agendas? Is where the problem lies, because we have also seen the project that the coalition brought in all died. Let's say the draft constitution, let's say the transitional justice, the TRRC, all died down, which are instruments of our development agenda.
The question, failure of political parties to work together, is that a problem for development?
See, there's a very big problem in this country. People must understand that coalitions are based on marriage of convenience. Like what Honorable Salah will say, 2016 coalition bill, Pehela won. Because these are political parties that have one goal. And the goal is to assume political power, to take political power.
But they have different sense of direction in how to do that. And also when they take over, how do they manage the affairs of the country? So that was why it was a surprise to a lot of people who said after 2016 election, 2017, the coalition will still be together. Let's contend National Assembly together. But then you have to understand that coalitions are bound to disintegrate because they don't believe in the same thing. The only goal they have is to secure political power. It's marriage of convenience. Once that convenience is not there, then you're done. So that was it. That was our experience. And then it seems like because 2016 coalition had succeeded, Gambians decided to take it as the only way to remove an incumbent. That's why 2021, when Barrow was announced as the winner, some political parties started challenging the results, and some people were out there saying, that is good for you, why didn't you come together? I was so pissed off, I said, I think I'm in the wrong society. Because we have developed a norm and a belief that the only way to remove an incumbent is through coalition formation. You see, we will keep on having problems because even when these people come together, at the end of the day, they will disintegrate. They will not remain together. They are political parties. What is the essence of a democracy when political parties come together? People saying that all political parties must come together. I've had someone who said his belief is that even after election, we can have ministers from different political parties to be in cabinet. Who will hold the government to account? Opposition political parties are like shadow governments. When you are in the football 18-man squad, you are on the bench, you are preparing that any moment you can be called. That is why when you are in opposition, you are helping the government to critique the actions and inactions of the government. So people must understand that coalitions are not the solution. Coalition formation is not necessarily the solution to our problems. If we believe in a particular political party and realize that this government in power is not doing the right thing, remove it. But we had a problem in this country in 2021, and we must say this. People look at political parties and say, no, we all know that the incumbent there is not competent, but we are not going to elect this political party. People said, no, it's not DOI. Some said, no, it's not UDP. No, it's not. But you believe that among all those options, they're all better than the man there. Are we honest to ourselves? And you think that, no, it's better that we have him there than to have others. If you think that Lawyer Dabo or Mama Kande are not the right people, Khalifa Saleh is an option, ESSA is an option, Lamin Jame is an option. All these people are options. You think that they're, without honest opinion, they are better than the man there. But it's because of emotions that we have to start realizing that, look, when a government fails to deliver its responsibility, we have a duty to remove that government from power. As Oboy will say, Mansame ala mala do koke. Ajindi? You said 10 minutes, but I think it should be 5 minutes now.
Okay. Now, for me, what I need to understand is corruption in this country, the issue is impunity. And because of this impunity, people are motivated or even empowered to embark on corrupt activities. There are a lot of, if you look at the history, we have seen a lot of corrupt activities that has been unfolding in media. But now, my question is, the National Assembly is the people represented. We are the people who should all be sitting at the National Assembly. The reason why we cannot all be there is because we select representatives. And now that all these audit reports that we're talking about has been discussed at the National Assembly, we just seen them now. So the question is, why now? Because this is a 2017 Auditor's General report, which was discussed at the National Assembly. So what does the National Assembly do to hold the government accountable? What steps are they taking to address this issue?
Can we take 3 last steps?
I think we need to assert our independence and say that should be it. It's scorchingly hot in here and it's becoming unbearable.
I think Tony.
Yeah, I understand Mr. Jai's concern, but I think let's take 2 last sets of questions and we can round up.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes. 4 minutes. So his question was
National Assembly.
Why are we seeing the auditor reports now?
I mean, MADI can help us today. The 6th one is the Auditor General report. It was since 2017. What is the role of Parliament?
So I think it all comes back to all of what we are saying. Now, I don't know whether all of you understand the National Audit Office as a public institution. Because I've met people who've never heard of the name National Audit Office or the role of an auditor general
as it is in the Constitution. And the National Audit Office, they even have a website, and you would find a lot of reports there. I remember some time ago, I shared their 2016 audit report of the Gambia government. And I mean, I was just going to commit suicide, really, what I saw there. So this report has been submitted to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly should take action on it. But the Constitution also gives power to the Auditor General that if he finds anyone for any discrepancy or fraud, he can directly send the matter to the IGP to investigate. So it's with the National Assembly. Before this 2017 report, just a week or 2 before, they had released the COVID response audit, which was also a subject of discussion in the National Assembly in December. And I don't know whether folks actually took time to follow National Assembly proceedings, as Mamadou here highlighted. So all of these things are there, and just wait, 2018 report is coming out soon. It's even more scandalous, all right? But please visit the National Audit Office website. Be interested in what this office is doing, really, be interested. But it is with the National Assembly, and the National Assembly has all the powers to refer any issue there to the IGP to investigate, to summon any public official, all right, that is mentioned in that report responsible, and to take action. So it is there. But also, the National Audit Office will be isolated, in fact, may even become a casualty if you and I don't raise our voices and engage as citizens to support them. So I think let us help ourselves by getting interested in this matter.
Thank you to the panelists, and my apology to those of you who were able to ask this question. It's Ramadan, and the dollars and secretaries are here complaining. So we thank you for coming and for honoring this invitation. Dr. CEESAY, Comrade JOBARTEH, I will call him, NJIE, and Mr. NJIE. And before I leave this stage and give back to the MC, I just want to say that on behalf of the Panel President Association, I am sorry, and I deeply meant it. When we selected the list of panelists that I did, the SG brought up the issue, we spoke about it. And like the attitude of all patriarchal men, we just talk and act, we don't act on issues that seem to affect women. So I'm giving no excuse. And on behalf of you all, and on behalf of my mother and every Gambian woman out there, I'm sorry, and be rest assured that the next time we have such gathering or such study session, there will be women, of course, in fact, competent women to form part of your panelists. Thank you for your kind attention.
If you want to receive monies from UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world, Supersonic's money transfer has got you covered. With the largest payout network in the Gambia, you can now receive your monies anywhere you are, from Kartong to Koina, with less hassle. Yes! You can receive monies from your family and friends in UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world with our safe, secure, fast, and convenient service that offers you the largest selection of payout locations in the Gambia. Supersonic's Money Transfer. We are currently in 34 African countries and counting, giving you quality money remittance services that are second to none. Visit the Google Play Store or the Apple Store today to download the Supersonics Money Transfer app and enjoy excellent money transfer services only with Supersonics.